My goodness, she's practically melting. Someone get a fan. The protagonist reassures her, saying, you don't need to force yourself, it's okay, thinking that her sweating is due to nervousness. He even feels her fingers trembling, not realizing how deep the issue was. Okay, he says, you've made a great sacrifice, you can relax a bit. She moves to the side, putting a hand on her nose, thankful that she didn't get a nosebleed. She tells the protagonist that she still can't get used to the feeling of a man's hand. It feels weird. The protagonist moves closer behind her while she's trying to calm herself using a meditation technique, attempting to control her heart. He gently touches the back of her neck and asks, you want to try a kiss to see how it feels? Our last one was with a lot of resistance. She's taken aback, a kiss. My goodness, my brother is so wonderful to make a sacrifice like this. He says, I want it too. And you still think I'm such an innocent boy. You're so beautiful. I just want a kiss from you. At this, she feels like she's about to explode. She punches the ceiling, her sanity dropping to 0, and then she grabs him. The protagonist is stunned, thinking, what just happened? She quickly tries to cover up, pretending she didn't enjoy it, and says it was really weird, that she needs to prepare herself mentally for it. The protagonist begins to question if she's okay and wondering if she really didn't like it. The situation seems strange. She then says she'll try to be more proactive and things escalate. She kisses him again, pushing him onto the bed. The protagonist is bewildered, needing to calm himself down. She starts talking about her dream of possibly being with him and says if things continue like this, she'll have to make it a reality. She doesn't even care if her plan gets exposed. In the middle of everything, she accidentally calls him Xiaoyang. The protagonist is shocked, asking, who's Xiaoyang? But before he can finish, she kisses him again, holding his hand and pulling him closer. He's out of breath, wondering what's going on as she becomes more intense than ever. She's practically drooling. Then she responds that despite everything, she still feels a little uncomfortable. It seems like the name she let slip was the name of a girl. The protagonist asks, did you call me a girl? She explains that she used a girl's name to disguise the situation and not feel worse. The protagonist asks if this Xiaoyang is the girl his sister likes the most, and she confirms, saying yes. The protagonist thinks that if she called out that name, her situation must be really critical, even in a moment like this. She says she needs to go to bed because she has to study and wake up early. The protagonist, now very suspicious, asks, are you really? She replies, a sister would never lie to you. If I lie to you, I'll be your slave. Wow, what a promise. The protagonist thinks, slave, like as she starts singing a little song to help him sleep. The next day, Shazo staring at him, thinking, sorry, how, I didn't want to lie to you like this, but I don't want you to hate me either. Given your past and traumas, this is the only way I can achieve the result I want. In the future, I promise to be more careful and make up for all the harm I'm doing now. So please forgive your little sister. The protagonist wakes up, thinking that the previous night was too exciting. He's at the pool, it's Friday, the day of the swimming class we talked about, and everyone is staring at him. The girls are practically barking. Long appears behind him and says, I want to go home, I'm too shy, this outfit shows too much. The protagonist, surprised, says, it's the same outfit as always, it doesn't show anything. He tells Long to stop being silly and be a real man, the worst advice ever, but okay. The girls continue complimenting Long, saying the outfit looks perfect on him, and that he looks amazing. The protagonist, getting tired of the situation, says he understands why girls hate these kinds of guys. Then he turns to Long and says, out of nowhere, I lost the desire to stay in this class. Long suggests they pretend to have stomach aches and leave. The protagonist agrees and decides to help Yuha learn to swim since it's better than staying there with all the crazy girls around them. She's preparing to jump in and asks the protagonist if the best way to swim is just to jump in and start paddling hard. He tells her that's not the way and that he'll teach her. They do a little warm-up, and for some reason, the protagonist is staring at her armpit. Dude got that weirdo desire. He looks at her and says he didn't see her put on that swimsuit, the one she bought last time. She asks, do you want to see me wearing that? He says, well, it's not that I don't want to, but yeah, I do. The protagonist is up to no good either. He caused all this mess with his sister last night. Yuna mentions that after the protagonist and Long left, she went back and bought a few more pairs. And if he wants to see, he can come to her house and she'll show him, as she doesn't want anyone else to see. The protagonist says that since he promised to teach her to swim, he will have to go to her house to teach her. He can't break his promises, but for now, he'll just teach her at school. He tells her to take a deep breath, prepare herself, and then he pushes her into the pool. As expected, she starts to drown again. The scene cuts to her, traumatized from almost drowning. The protagonist tells her to be careful, that she needs to breathe deeply and gradually. However, when he touches her, he notices that she's shaking, completely desperate and scared, and she says she wants to give him a hug because she's in shock. The protagonist, feeling sorry for her, says it's not a good idea since it's class time and everyone's watching, so it's not the best moment to be hugging. She then shares a childhood trauma, explaining that once she ran off without her parents noticing, and when they found her, she was almost dead, having nearly drowned. Moved by sympathy, the protagonist offers to give her a hug. She immediately jumps at the opportunity, clinging to him tightly. while everyone around them comments on the situation. The protagonist tells the teacher that Yuha is having cramps and that he'll take her away to help her. Later, when they're alone, he asks if she's feeling better. She says that she hates the pool and thinks she'll never get used to it. She apologizes, expressing that despite the protagonist's attempts to help, she just can't manage. Jang-ha feels a bit awkward but reassures her, saying there's no need to apologize and that she'll get the hang of it with practice. To compensate, he offers her a massage. Here we go again with the massages. He starts with her calf and then moves to her shoulders, giving her a firm but soothing massage. She immediately comments on how comfortable and calming his hands are, but she hints that she wants more, asking him to go for other places. When he asks where, she points to her upper body. Realizing the implication, Jang-ha tells her to stop joking around, insisting that he's a serious masseur and won't engage in anything improper. However, she kicks his hand away angrily, saying she wanted a serious massage, not a joke. He firmly tells her to stop talking like that, especially in public, and to give him her leg again so he can continue the massage. She questions why she can't talk about these things, and he explains that such talk is perverse and is something only couples should do, and it should be kept private. No one in the class should know about it. Do you want to be known as a pervert? She looks desolate and confused, then starts crying. Completely distraught, she says she doesn't care and wants to be known as a pervert. The protagonist is shocked, thinking, where's my innocent Yuha? What's happening? He tells her, you're only saying this because you don't understand how dangerous perverts are. You don't want to be an abominable person, do you? She replies that she doesn't care since he gave her that massage and she no longer wants to learn how to swim. The protagonist makes a deal. If she learns to swim, he'll do anything she asks within reason. She agrees eagerly, clearly ready for something more. Back in the office of our dear Wei, we haven't seen her for a while. It seems she couldn't finish her work because she was busy looking at photos of the protagonist. She thinks to herself how exhausted she is and how she can't focus because of that damn goblin. She glances at her phone thinking, why don't I just take one more look? She sees a picture she took in the helicopter and blushes. The scene shifts to someone pressing the elevator button and a man appears, asking if she's the general manager. Wei makes a face as if she's ready to scold her mother. Her mother says, do you think I'm the kind of mom who hits on her daughter's boyfriend? For heaven's sake, I'm just curious. With so many handsome men chasing after you, why did she choose this Jang-ha specifically? Wei responds that there's nothing special and that she wants to get back to work. Her mother leaves, telling her not to sleep at her desk. As her mother leaves, she thinks this is a real problem. It seems my daughter is in love, and that's a weakness that can exist. The scene shifts again, showing the protagonist observing Weinen's secretary, who had been expelled. He thinks, wait, isn't that the secretary who got kicked out? Let me go have a chat with her. He walks over, introduces himself, and asks if she has some free time. She's caught off guard, not expecting this. He gets straight to the point, mentioning that he noticed in their last argument that it seemed like they were both subordinates of Minwera's grandmother. So what's the deal? The secretary interprets this as him showing interest in Wei. He quickly clarifies that she's just a stalker and he has no interest in her. He just wants to know why she's so fixated on him. Didn't she hate men? The secretary explains that it's not that she hates men, but she despises weakness. And since our protagonist is a total Sigma Chad, she couldn't resist. It seems she developed this hatred because of her father. He always obeyed her mother, did everything she said, while the mother would go out drinking and seeing other men. In the end, he caught a disease and died alone in the hospital, and the mother didn't even visit him. He died as a lonely, forever alone guy. That's why she despises weakness and clingy men. The protagonist thinks that maybe the best way to make Wei hate him is by pretending to be weak. Could that be the plan? The secretary suggests that he should join her, because Wei would never treat him badly. Even after everyone left the army, she hired everyone who had been at the base with them and gave them much higher salaries. So it's guaranteed that if he joins her, his life will only get better. The protagonist says it's not possible because she wants to dominate too much, and he's the kind of person who doesn't like that. If they were together, one of them would always be mad. At that moment, someone appears and says, young man, I finally found you. The secretary is shocked and the protagonist is confused. It seems she's already closed the cafe and only the security guard is left, having sent everyone away. She's staring at the protagonist, saying, you look good, but how long have you two been dating? The protagonist tries to explain, saying she's overreacting and they're not even dating. She retorts, not dating? For heaven's sake, is it possible that my daughter still hasn't managed to win you over? This is a disgrace for the family. The protagonist asks why she's looking for him. She says it's inconvenient to talk here, suggesting they go inside. She's taking the protagonist to a private room. The secretary senses something bad might happen. She tries to rescue the protagonist, saying that we just call it Zhang Hao, and she's just there to fetch him, so let's leave. But the woman beckons her closer with a finger, and when she hesitates, she gets a sharp elbow to the chin. The protagonist is utterly confused by the turn of events. The woman apologizes, saying it's been a while since she had to land a blow like that, so maybe it came out too strong. The protagonist stands there, stunned, wondering what's going on. Am I caught up in some mess again? The woman remarks, oh young man, you're quite calm. Any average student would be intimidated by now. The protagonist says that ever since he got involved with Wei, these situations have become common, so be somewhat used to them. Now that he knows she's the mother, he's thinking, she's the gang leader, so I better not mess up. The mother then comments, it's obvious my daughter doesn't like delicate men. What I don't understand is why it seems like you don't like her. Don't you want to be my son-in-law? Don't you want to join the Wai family? The protagonist tries to deflect, saying he's just an ordinary citizen and doesn't deserve her daughter, claiming there's nothing special about him. He also says he needs to leave because his family is probably looking for him. She says, since you're in a hurry, I want to make a deal with you. The protagonist is surprised, asking, a deal with me? I'm just a high school student, I can't help you. She insists that only he can do it because, according to her observations, her daughter is obsessed with him. If he asks her for something, she probably won't refuse. The protagonist, still confused, listens as she tells him to invite Wei on a trip to a specific location. Once there, he is to set up a situation where her people can arrive and capture her daughter. Then she promises to give the protagonist a lot of money, enough for him to move to another country and live an easy life. And then he says, wait, you want me to help you take down Wei? Isn't she your daughter? How am I supposed to take her down? She responds, it's simple. I want my title as the head of the family back. There hasn't been a mother-daughter relationship between us for a long time. The scene shows a panel indicating that Wei had beaten her mother, taking control of the family. The protagonist, feeling awkward, says, with all due respect, isn't Wei already a head of the family? Since she took over, the family's status has become more significant and relevant in the entire city. So why do you want to fight her? It seems like she's doing a good job. The mother explains that the only thing she has left is money, and she wants to use it to do whatever she wants. I have no family, no one left, she says. So why not stir things up? She asks, what do you think? You don't even like her, do you? Let's take advantage of this situation. The protagonist is shocked, unsure of what to do. The scene shifts to the secretary, who is semi-conscious, looking around and thinking about how her training helped her withstand the blow. Otherwise, she might have been done for. She realizes she needs to alert Wei as soon as possible. She subtly taps her wristband, sending a silent signal. The scene cuts to Wei's phone, where she receives a message indicating that Madam had contacted John Hao in a private room. Wei is startled and orders the car to be prepared immediately. The scene shifts back to the protagonist and the mother. The protagonist says that even if she manages to defeat Wei, managing the family won't be easy, as many people support her. He suggests that despite the issues between them, they should try to talk things out. The mother dismisses this, saying, Wei is a cold-hearted person. It's better to have a dog than her. She's been against me ever since her father died. There's no way to talk to her. If I had known what kind of woman she would become, I wouldn't have given birth to her. The protagonist, knowing the truth about the father's death, thinks the mother is lying because he knows the father died because she neglected him and he was left alone in the hospital. Trying to deflect, he says, that's a lot to deal with. I understand why Wei resents you because of her father, but all you need to do is show a little more care for the family, and everything will get back on track. The mother retorts, oh, are you trying to convince me to give up on this? I came here because I sensed you didn't like her, but it seems like you're trying to protect her. She points out that the punch she gave to the secretary was a declaration of war. She insists, all you have to do is take Wei to the location I specify and I'll give you the money. You won't have to worry about anything else. The protagonist asks, and if I don't agree to help you? The mother rises, you don't want to help me or take the money? Fine, then your family and you will become my hostages. Simple as that. The protagonist, with a serious expression, responds, it's one thing to threaten me, but to bring my family into this, I can't let that happen. I'm sorry. You made a mistake by not bringing any bodyguards with you. She looks at him intrigued and says, do you think you can defeat me physically? He challenges her, come and see. As the scene shifts, a car pulls up and Wei orders the driver to move aside. The secretary spots Wei and tells her, finally, you're here. John Ho was taken by your mother a while ago. I'm afraid something might have happened. Wei asks which room they're in and sends her guards to untie the secretary, intending to confront them. As she approaches, she hears the conversation. The mother is saying, it's common for everyone who gets close to my daughter to have some kind of agenda, but it seems she likes you, and I wanted to know what you're like. The protagonist asks, is that why you went to so much trouble? Does Wei know you came to see me? The mother replies, I don't know, she might be furious if she finds out. That child has always insisted that I stay out of her relationships, but this is the first time I've seen her like someone, so I was curious about you. She continues, now that I've seen you, I understand why she isn't wrong. Besides wanting to see you, there's something else I want to ask of you. The protagonist asks what it is, and she explains that Wei's birthday is coming up and she wants to give her a present. However, she knows Wei won't accept it if she gives it directly, so she wants the protagonist to deliver it. Meanwhile, Wei is listening to everything, feeling perplexed. The protagonist and the mother continue, with the mother explaining that the Wei family is large and prosperous, requiring multiple heirs. The problem arose when her father couldn't have children, leading the mother to push many men toward her, hoping to produce an heir. The mother didn't want to, but she had to. Over time, she distanced herself too much from Wei, and by the time she noticed, Wei was already grown. Now she hopes the protagonist can help her resolve this mess. The protagonist responds that he can't help with that. If she wants Wei's forgiveness and understanding, she needs to earn it herself. Moreover, she needs to understand that no matter what she does, she can't make up for lost time. The scene changes to the protagonist leaving the room where he sees Wai Man. He asks, "What are you doing here?" She switches topics asking, "Did you hear everything we talked about?" Wei apologizes, saying she told her mother not to do this, but she came on her own. The protagonist asks if she plans to reconnect with her mother. Wai replies that she'll keep things as they are and nothing will change. She then asks the protagonist what he would do if his mother, who had abandoned him for years, suddenly reappeared wanting to talk. The protagonist reflects on his family with his sister and parents and says he'd prefer if his mother didn't return because his family's fine as it is. Wei asks, "So you're good with your family? How's your relationship with your half-sister?" He responds, "It's fine, really good." "Why are you asking?" She reveals she's considering moving his family so she can protect them more easily. The protagonist refuses, asking why she keeps insisting on this. "Since when am I your man?" he asks. She confidently states, "Sooner or later." The protagonist insists it's not going to happen. Suddenly, she stops the car and he asks what she's planning. She explains that her father gave up and surrendered, just like her mother did, pressured by her grandmother. But she won't give up on him and won't let him be with anyone else. She'll keep pursuing him until he accepts her completely. The protagonist warns that this is too extreme, but the scene ends with a close-up of her lips, and he can't help but be charmed. Covering her mouth, he was being all cute. But our boy gave her a little tap on the hand and said, "Stop pushing things, girl. We're on the road here." She looked at him and said, "Wanna go to my place? Let's go." He told her to just take him home. But just then, his sister called. He picked up and she immediately scolded him. "It's super late. Where are you? Why aren't you home yet?" Our boy tried to cover it up, saying he was at Long Long's place and lost track of time. But Wei was watching him lie the whole time. He turned to Wei and said, "You've heard that? I gotta go home now." She called him Fox Boy again and asked, "So you know how to lie, huh?" He responded, "I'm only lying because of you." She then asked, "Does your sister care about you that much?" He confirmed, "Yes, because we're family." She just said family, but Wei was already thinking it might not be that simple. When he got home, his sister greeted him and he started apologizing, saying Long Long had held him up or something. But she stopped him and said, "Why are you lying to me?" Yikes. He was caught off guard trying to play dumb. "Sis, what are you talking about? I'm not lying. I'd never lie to you." But then she revealed, "I called Long Long. He said you left his place a long time ago." Busted dude. He didn't expect her to have Long Long's number. She continued, "I've always been alone, just like you, with single mom working all day. I only learned what family warmth was with you. I consider you my favorite brother. But it seems I was too sentimental. To you, I'm just a stranger. Ouch, bro. You screwed." She shed a tear and said, "If you don't want me involved in your life, fine. I won't bother you anymore." She turned to leave. The protagonist tried to grab her arm, asking her to listen, apologizing and explaining that he had gone out to dinner with a friend, but was afraid she'd worry. He reassured her it was just a friend and nothing more. Desperately, he continued apologizing. But she shook off his hand and said, "You just need to understand that I care about you." And then she walked away, leaving him defeated. Our boy collapsed, lamenting that he was a terrible person, feeling awful for disappointing her despite all her kindness. Back in her room, obviously in shock, she thought, "Oh my god, I can't believe I had the courage to slap his hand. What if he's really mad?" But then she told herself she needed to be confident. She couldn't just let him walk all over her. Maybe slapping his hand was too much though. Should she apologize on her knees? She fell to the floor, lost, unsure of what to do. But then she regained her composure, thinking, "Wait a minute. He said he went out to dinner with a girl. Who is this girl he felt the need to lie to me about?" She's ready to investigate. Is there going to be an honest showdown between the two? Cut to the night and she's sniffing his clothes in the laundry, trying to detect a perfume. She remembered it was the same perfume she had smelled before. Could it be the perfume of that girl, Yuea? She's left pondering. The next day it seems they're going out. She offers him a chance to rest and sleep in the car if he wants. But he's just thinking he needs to find a chance to talk to her and explain the situation. They're apparently going to his father's cousin's house, and he's curious about what it's going to be like since he remembers the guy being pretty cool and handsome. However, his father suddenly says, "Who's that kid staring at us?" When the protagonist looks, it's Yuha, looking all cute in her outfit. His dad asks, "Who's that bold girl here, son?" He responds, "A classmate." He goes to greet her and asks if something's wrong, why she's there. She says she came to invite him to an art exhibition together. Meanwhile, his parents are thinking she's probably a potential girlfriend, impressed by her boldness to come to the door like that. And Big Sister is watching, ready to kill Yuha. The protagonist introduces his mom and dad to Yuha, who is visibly happy, apologizing for the inconvenience and introducing herself. She seems delighted to meet everyone, feeling that things are going well. Then the protagonist's sister steps up and bluntly asks, "Are you trying to date John Hao?" Without hesitation, Yue says yes and admits she likes him a lot. This shocks everyone. The sister starts to explain something but gets cut off by their dad, who advises Zhang Hao not to fall in love because he's too young. The protagonist tries to clarify that Yuha is just a friend from school. The father then turns to Yuha and insists that his son is too young to fall in love and that she should not come around anymore or follow him. The protagonist tells her that they have some family coming over and suggests they discuss this later. Yuha, pretending to be naive, asks, "So I can't fall in love with him?" The protagonist's mother responds that she can fall in love, just not with Zhang Hao. The protagonist is unsure how to end this situation. His sister steps in, saying she'll handle it. She gets close to Yuha, making the protagonist's mother worried, thinking she might be hitting on Yuha. But the sister is just trying to smell Yuha's perfume to see if it's the same as the one on the clothes. To cover it up, she puts her hand over Yuha's mouth, saying, "It's okay, you can still love me, please." At this point, the protagonist's mother pulls the sister away, alarmed. The protagonist asks Yuha to leave, promising they will talk later. She apologizes and leaves. The sister is left thinking, if it isn't the same perfume, then who is this other woman constantly around my Zhang Hao? The scene shifts to the protagonist's father greeting the cousins. When they arrive, the cousin, who used to be quite a player, now was in short shorts, looking very dainty. The protagonist, despite all the chapters, still isn't used to it. Later, during a conversation in the garage, the topic shifts to the situation with Yuha. They talk about understanding how Zhang Hao, being so attractive, is likely pursued by many. The cousin then comments on how beautiful the protagonist's sister is, and the protagonist's mother agrees, saying Kin is also very beautiful. The protagonist, looking somewhat disappointed, tries to escape the conversation by offering to help his dad in the kitchen. However, his cousin stops him, saying Zhang Hao is so good-looking that he should just take care of himself like a flower and everything will work out for him. He advises Zhang Hao to find a rich woman and relax. The protagonist insists he likes helping his dad when needed, but his cousin keeps insisting that women nowadays are learning to cook just to please men, so he doesn't need to worry about that. Realizing his cousin won't stop bothering him, the protagonist suggests they go to his room to continue talking. In his room, the cousin notices how plain it is and asks if they're sure it's not his sister's room. The protagonist explains he likes his simple lifestyle, but the cousin says he needs to learn more about cosmetics and beauty. Immediately, the cousin asks if he has a girlfriend, to which the protagonist replies that he doesn't. The cousin then stands up and says, "See this outfit I'm wearing? My girlfriend bought everything." The protagonist seems unimpressed, obviously recognizing that his cousin is someone who sells out for easy money. The cousin then asks if his sister has a boyfriend. The protagonist replies that she doesn't, but a lot of people are after her, mentioning that she even had a stalker following her at one point. The cousin comments that he's heard she's not only very smart, but also quite attractive. The protagonist is shocked considering the cousin just mentioned having a girlfriend. At that moment, his sister enters the room and tells them that lunch is ready, so they should come down. The cousin winks at her, trying to be charming, and says they'll be right there. As they leave the room, the sister apologizes for her earlier behavior and expresses a desire to talk privately with the protagonist later to apologize properly. The protagonist, sensing something is up, agrees, saying he also wants to talk. They agree to chat after lunch. She urges them to eat quickly, showing her eagerness. The scene shifts to them finishing their meal, with the protagonist declaring he's done eating, and she responds similarly. However, just then the protagonist's phone rings and he answers. It's the woman from the antique store, informing him that the plate he had requested to be repaired is ready. He asks about the condition and the cost, and she informs him that his girlfriend already paid for it. Confused, he wonders who could have done this and quickly excuses himself, saying he has urgent business to attend to. His sister doesn't seem too pleased, though she tries to hide her frustration, reminding herself to keep calm and not push him away. She tells the protagonist not to be late or they'll worry about him. He assures her he'll be back soon and leaves, relieved that she doesn't seem too upset. After he leaves, the cousin makes a comment about how attractive the protagonist is and suggests he might be going on a date. This only irritates the sister, who stands up with a murderous look, agreeing that she needs to keep a closer watch on him. At the antique store, the protagonist receives the plate with a note on it saying, "I paid for your repairs, so come see me when you get this." It's from Wai Nan. Clearly, she's the one who paid for it, and the protagonist doesn't look pleased. Back at Feng Hong, the company, Wai Nan is looking stunning as the protagonist walks in, asking for permission to enter. She immediately questions why he didn't knock before coming in. He starts to leave, but she stops him, saying he's staying because once she finishes her work, they're going out for dinner. The protagonist tries to decline, saying he's not available, and then pulls out the repaired relic, asking her how much she would deduct from his debt for it. He suggests that if it's not much, he could sell it elsewhere and bring her the money. However, she seems uninterested in the monetary value and more concerned about where they'll eat. The protagonist finds it challenging to deal with her as she always has a response that he doesn't want to hear. Trying to change the subject, he suggests taking the relic to an auction and informing her of the amount it fetches. But she walks over, grabs the plate, and smashes it. The protagonist is left speechless, as the item was worth millions and involved so much trouble, including death, just to repair. Even though she didn't want it, he asked for it because it was worth a lot of money. Apparently, it fell into the trash can, and he ran to retrieve it. She told him to stay away from it because it was dirty and broken antiques weren't worth much. At that moment, she grabbed his wrist to lift him up and ended up breaking it. His wrist literally snapped. The protagonist and Y are both confused by the situation. The next scene shows him wondering why he has such a fragile body. Y examines him and says there's no major damage. It was just a tendon strain and he'll be fine soon. However, she advises him to see a doctor. Out of nowhere, the protagonist asks her, "You retired from the military and you're still so strong. Did you really see combat?" She confirms she did and almost died. She offers to tell him the whole story if he stays the night. The protagonist declines, saying he wasn't that interested, he was just curious. He starts to leave, but she insists he stay for dinner. He retorts that she's too persistent. She mentions that she read all the novels he wrote and they seemed too real. She wants to talk about them over dinner. The protagonist wonders about her connection to the girl from the moon and flops onto the couch, surprised that his novels had such an impact. He considers staying since he hadn't eaten much earlier with his sister and was still hungry. White quickly orders dinner for two and teasingly asks what made him decide to stay the night. The protagonist, embarrassed, clarifies they only agreed to dinner, not the whole night. She then teases him about looking at her legs and accuses him of being dishonest with his eyes. He awkwardly explains that he was just admiring her expensive-looking clothes since he's from a poor background. But she quickly moves in and pins him to the couch. The protagonist, shocked, asks if she can't control herself. She insists she doesn't need to, as he's destined to be hers. He tries to laugh it off, saying she's reading too many novels and playfully squats her behind. She gets annoyed, accusing him of teasing her without following through. She questions if he's afraid. The protagonist, offended, retorts that he's not afraid of anyone and threatens to teach her a lesson. However, when he tries to push her off, she doesn't budge. He then notices the significant size difference between them. She relents, telling him not to get angry as he might hurt his hand again. As she stands up, the protagonist grabs her by the shoulder, throws her onto the couch and tells her to stop annoying him, saying they don't match. She suddenly changes the subject, saying she's studying the reason behind the red moon and will explain it to him. The next chapter shifts to the protagonist's house, where his cousin wonders why the protagonist's sister doesn't like him. At that moment, Yuba shows up at the protagonist's house, and his cousin is contemplating making a move on her. She greets him, but he steps aside, giving her space to pass. The protagonist's parents appear and see her, expressing surprise. However, she immediately hands them apology gifts, saying the first is for Jean Hao, the second for the father, the third for the mother, and the fourth for the sister. The father continues, insisting that she should stop hanging around Jean Hao as he won't fall in love anytime soon. The mother chimes in, telling her to leave. Meanwhile, the cousin is shocked to find out that she might be a suitor for Jean Hao. Yuva clarifies that she doesn't want to fall in love with Jean Hao. She just wants to spend the rest of her life with him as great friends. The parents look at her skeptically, clearly thinking she's not being truthful. Yuna pleads, asking them to let her be friends with Jean Hao and hands over a briefcase. The mother, feeling the need to set boundaries, decides to play the role of the strict parent and tells Yuha that she doesn't want to see her around Jean Hao anymore and that she should stay away from him. The cousin, overhearing this, thinks he'll have a chance to comfort her after she leaves, but Yuna firmly states that Jean Hao is special to her and she'll remain friends with him regardless of what they think. Meanwhile, back with the protagonist and Wei, she's recounting a story about being on a mission and receiving a fatal injury. Just as she was about to die, she saw the red moon and somehow survived. The protagonist is puzzled, noting that her experience seems entirely different from his. He asks if she might have been hallucinating due to her severe injuries, but she insists that wasn't the case. She explains that her wounds were beyond modern medicine's ability to heal, and that's why she's been studying the phenomenon of the red moon ever since. She mentions that during the second appearance of the red moon, she noticed the protagonist whose behavior didn't match anything she'd seen before. She found his novels similar to some dreams she had, leading her to believe that he might have some connection to the red moon. The protagonist, surprised by her experiences, watches as she begins to unbutton her clothes, stunned and asking why she's undressing. She points to her abdomen, explaining that it was there she received the fatal wound which destroyed all her internal organs. However, as you can see, she has no scars. She wonders why so many died that day, yet she survived, and asks him if the world in his novel truly exists. Realizing the only way to handle her is to cooperate, the protagonist agrees but sets conditions. He must be free to contact his family whenever he wants, and she can't isolate him for her studies. She gets upset at the suggestion she might imprison him, but he retorts that capitalists have a cold heart. With a sigh, he resigns himself to the fact that he'll have to deal with her for now and reveals, "I'm not from this world. When I saw the red moon, I woke up in this body." The scene shifts back to Yuha, standing under the sun, waiting for John Ho's parents to accept the gift. It seems she's determined not to leave until they do. The father finally relents, saying, "Okay, since you seem to have no bad intentions, I will allow you to be friends." She responds that Jean Hao is her best friend and she would never have any ill intentions. He observes that she appears sincere and accepts the gift, then tells her to return to her family. Later in the living room, the family examines the gifts she brought, gorgeous jewelry. Naturally, they suspect it's fake because nobody gives such expensive gifts. They're trying on the pieces, commenting on how realistic they look, almost like the real thing. The sister then enters and asks who gave them the jewelry. The mother explains that it was a friend of Hao Hao's who came by and they didn't know what to do, so they accepted the gifts. But they all believe it's probably fake. The cousin agrees, but the sister picks up a sapphire and upon examining it, says it doesn't seem fake. Judging by the cuts and details, it likely is a genuine sapphire worth tens of millions. As everyone stood in shock, especially the cousin with ulterior motives, the scene shifted back to the office. It seemed the protagonist had finished explaining to Wei everything that happened with the Red Moon and how he ended up in this world. Wei was lost in thought, contemplating the existence of parallel worlds. She asked, "So, in your world, do men chase after women, and is it normal for them to walk around shirtless, showing off their chests?" This led to the protagonist wondering what would happen if he went to the beach here. Would it be strange? He didn't dwell on it much, but thought about it briefly. He confirmed that everything she said was true, and that he's a normal man. When he sees a beautiful woman, he can't help but look a little longer. In his world, he wears shorts to the beach. Here, he's considered a wild man, so he's probably not a good match for her. Moreover, he might return to his world at any moment, and since she's a great woman, he doesn't want to hurt her. He suggests she finds a normal man. Ignoring his concerns, she asked if it would be normal for him to take off his shirt now and show everything since he's from that world. The protagonist replied, "Of course, in my world, if it's hot, guys take off their shirts." We imagined the sight, seemingly stunned, thinking about men walking around shirtless and how daring they must be. She then challenged him, "If that's the case, take off your shirt now. I want to see how it is. If you're telling the truth, you won't feel anything about it." Reluctantly, he started taking off his shirt, thinking he'd show her what a man from his world is like. But as he did, he noticed her intense, almost soul-sucking gaze, making him hesitant. At that moment, he recalled the goddess and wondered if he was assimilating into this world's norms and if his thoughts and behavior were changing accordingly. Meanwhile, Wei was clearly flustered, her hand between her legs, hearts in her eyes, trembling as she urged him. "Well, are you going to take it off or not? What's wrong? You said it was easy. Why are you hesitating?" The protagonist, wanting to prove his manliness, pulled off his shirt, revealing his chest to her. She trembled even more, thinking it was too much for her, and awkwardly asked him to put his shirt back on, admitting she couldn't control herself. The protagonist felt defeated by the situation, especially by his hesitation to take off his shirt, which should have been a normal thing. Wei, wiping her face, stated that from now on, they would work together and express pleasure in getting to know him. However, the protagonist, firm in his decision, told her not to contact him unless necessary as he was busy and got up to leave, insisting that next time if there's any meal involved, he would be the one to invite her. He had things to take care of, so he bid her farewell. Wei, still flustered, asked if he really couldn't stay, offering anything he wanted as long as he stayed. The protagonist firmly refused, saying not to even think about it, as he wouldn't agree to anything. Upon returning home, his sister was staring at the sapphire, thinking about how sapphires symbolize loyalty and perseverance. She pondered whether Wei had the financial means to give such a valuable gift to her brother. In that moment, she eyed the protagonist's cousin and thought, if that's the case, I'll have to use this guy. Sometime later, Zhang Ho was back home. His father, all worried, asked why the hell he took so long. That's when he mentioned all the jewelry Yua had left for our boy. Ken Qin commented that besides being very wealthy, the girl seemed to come from a rich family. The father made a serious face and told the protagonist that he couldn't like the girl just because she was a millionaire. Meanwhile, the cousin was fuming because he wanted to have received that necklace himself. Thinking about Yua, he swore to himself that he would win her over after all. She was his ticket to wealth. However, he was already imagining the wrath of someone and thought that at least he had her waiting for him. The boy was daydreaming, thinking he had options to choose from, even though he believed that Zhang Hao, despite being handsome, wasn't very seductive. Sometime later, someone said they were arriving. Zhang Hao apologized, saying they couldn't accept the gift because it was too expensive. Suddenly, his cousin appeared, saying they had met again. Zhang Hao remarked that it was quite a coincidence that they had already seen each other. In the cousin's mind, all he had to do now was create a little physical contact and stumble like an idiot. Yuva seemed scared as he approached and promptly kicked him in the chest. She apologized, saying she acted instinctively while the boy was coughing. She asked if he was okay as his legs seemed wobbly. Zhang Hao suggested they should be more concerned about others for now, while the cousin realized his plan had completely backfired. Zhang Hao once again stated that he didn't need those gifts, and Yuha asked if he didn't like them. The father intervened, saying that such gifts were too expensive and somewhat intimidating. Zhang Hao replied that he didn't need such things to improve their relationship, returning the gifts and stating he would accept a kindness, but she could keep those things. She asked if he hated her because of this. The parents, embarrassed, reassured her that she didn't need to worry about it and that their relationship hadn't changed. The sister stepped in, saying they were just friends, so there was no reason for him to hate her, and suggested she return the gift if she wanted to remain friends with him. Ken Qin was furious that the damn cousin hadn't accomplished anything. Then Ken Qin turned to Yuha and said it was getting late, so she would take her home. However, the mother insisted that she would take the girl, already suspecting that the daughter was trying to hit on the girl in the car. In the end, Ken Qin's plan to have a conversation with Yuha failed. Everyone was leaving together, and she couldn't do anything about it. At that moment, Jong Ho's cousin asked to add Yuha to his contacts. However, Jong Ho, feeling possessive, quickly said that she wasn't that casual and wouldn't give out her number. The cousin realized he didn't stand much of a chance, and Yuha agreed with what Jong Ho had said. Kin, upset, told them not to get too close because it was dangerous. Jong Ho noticed that his sister wasn't hiding anything anymore. However, the fool thought his sister was also in love with Yuha, already imagining that the girl was amazing for winning everyone over around her. Now he was motivated to make peace with his sister because she seemed very angry. The next day, his sister woke him up for breakfast. He arrived all sleepy, saying good morning. When he asked where everyone was, since it was just the two of them, she told him that the cousin and the others had left, so it was just them there. Our boy already knew that life at home wouldn't be easy. Embarrassed, she asks what he's doing, and he apologizes for lying lately. Meanwhile, the sister thinks her plan was to make peace, but she didn't expect it to be so easy. Now, feeling completely better, she says it's even better when he takes the initiative. She acknowledges that something sad happened, but emphasizes that the future is more important. She asks Jong Ho never to hide anything again. He hesitates for a second, knowing he's hiding a lot of things, but simply says okay because he's not about to reveal any of it. He thinks to himself that after everything is resolved, he will confess the secrets. With that, the poor girl feels completely relieved, thinking he's so kind. At this moment, Jong Ho says she no longer needs to hide that she's in love with Yuha. The poor sister is utterly confused. She starts laughing, thinking he's acting this way because he's jealous. She takes advantage of his foolishness to ask him not to bring Yuha around anymore. Otherwise, she won't be able to control herself at home. Strangely, he says it's been a while since they did a special training and asks for help. Kin, who has a problem with her sweat glands, agrees to help him. So she puts lipstick on her boy. And with that, she says that these events make all the sadness irrelevant. The scene shifts to Wei's secretary in front of her nursery. She thinks this must be the right place. Inside, a woman is on the phone and tells her to come in. As soon as she appears, she introduces herself and says she has some questions. The woman welcomes her and tells her to sit down. The secretary hands over a sheet of paper and says she wants to know everything that happened with these two people during their time there. She's trying to find out if the girl abducted the boy, and more importantly, what she did to make everyone in that place cover up the events. The woman starts trembling when she sees the photos of Jong Ho and Kin. Hesitantly, she asks the secretary how she found out about this. The secretary responds that she doesn't have to explain anything and demands to know everything that happened. The woman, frightened, seems to hesitate but explains that she will never forget this person in her life. She recalls once asking Kin where she had taken Jong Ho and, more importantly, what she had done with him. Kin replied that they were just playing together and questioned if that was a problem. The teacher said it was indeed a problem because she couldn't just take other students out of there as she pleased. She warned that she would have to speak with Kin's family to take action. But Kin asked if that was really the best option. The teacher was a bit confused, but the girl advised her that it might not be wise to escalate the situation. She explained that no one saw them return, and no one knew she had taken the boy. So she suggested that everyone would probably believe her if she said the teacher was just making it up, or worse, that everyone would blame the teacher for letting it happen. If it were proven that something happened as a teacher, she would be held most responsible. Kin then asked the teacher if she really wanted that to happen. The poor woman stood there frozen while Kin urged her to answer quickly. Back in the present, the secretary asks if she really gave in to that. The woman responds that she contacted the family to ask how the boy was. That's when the family said the boy would never return there, and they were moving away. The secretary asks if that resolved the situation, and the woman says yes, since no one returned. She then asks if the woman knows what Kin did when she took Jong Ho. The woman says she doesn't know but discover how Kin referred to Jong Ho. Curious, the secretary asks her to explain quickly. The woman explains that Kin called Jong Ho her little toy. Back in the moment, Jong Ho says he will show the strength of a man. She is there, very sad and clearly not saying much. She then says she wants to tell him something and grabs his face. She tells him he is amazing, thanks him, and says she is ready. He asks if she really wants to continue with the strength training. Suddenly, she is caught off guard and confused. He says that if they keep practicing, she'll soon like men again, while the boy, like a bull, declares that now that he's here, he'll go forward. She's a bit scared, not expecting him to be so forward, especially since he has such an innocent appearance. Our boy starts sweating cold, realizing things are getting serious. He gave her a simple foot massage. Time passed, and the boy had put in a lot of effort. He then asked her to check if his heart was racing. That's when she thought that the training they did when they were younger hadn't been in vain. Now she knows she just needs to complete the next step to fully win over Jong Ho. Our boy says they will continue. She sees that he's standing there preparing for something and asks if he's talking about this. He tells her not to be nervous and to relax. But now she's the one who's scared because there's unlikely to be anyone else intervening. She's panicking, not knowing how to react, while Jong Ho thinks she's cute when she acts like this. He then smiles, saying that he's finally going to do it, but obviously, he feels something strange. His stomach starts hurting and he doesn't know what's happening. She asks what's wrong, and he says he's feeling some strange discomfort. As he suffers, wondering why it hurts so much, she tells him to wait there while she gets some hot water. Going to the kitchen, she thinks it's a shame she almost won the game, but she's excited because this confirms the boy's intentions. She decides that when the time is right, she will confess to him. While later, she brought some milk and a few eggs for him to eat. She asked our boy, who was lying down, if he's okay. He says it didn't help much and asks if she knows any medicine since she's a doctor. She says that medicines have side effects, so it's better for him to rest for now. Then she says she has an amazing idea. Suddenly, she climbs over him, lies next to him, and says she's going to give him a belly massage to help him relax a bit. She also puts on some relaxing music, and the notes fill the room. While our boy thought she was amazing, he began to think that maybe staying in this world forever wouldn't be so bad, as having someone take care of him like this every day wouldn't be bad at all. The scene shifts to someone banging on Kin's paper. It's the president pounding the table, saying she knew something was wrong. The secretary asks what they're going to do, but then she remembers that John Hao had set a rule that she couldn't contact his family. She hesitates for a second, unsure of the best option, and says she'll have to make a call first. A while later, John Hao was sleeping and Kin said he was very cute like that. Suddenly, he received an unknown call. She immediately hung up, relieved that he didn't wake up. She picked up the phone thinking she had to be careful because it could disrupt things. But then she got scared. The message included records from when she was younger. She immediately realized someone was investigating. Grabbing John Hao's head, she gave him a kiss on the cheek, saying she wouldn't let anyone take him away. The scene changes to a restaurant. Someone calls out to Wei, asking why she's investigating. It's obviously the big sister. Wei tells her to sit down because she ordered her favorite flavor. Shin quickly asks who she is. Wei immediately says that she likes John Hao and that it's best for the sister to stay away. Kin says she didn't expect it to be John Hao's stalker and warns that, unfortunately for Wei, John Hao prefers her. But Wei pulls out the photos and warns that the boy would be very sad if he saw all that, indicating she has proof that she's been stalking him since he was younger. However, the psychopathic Kin just asks if she really thinks that's an effective threat. She explains that she's simply been taking care of him since he was younger and declares that, in the end, he'll be hers. Wei laughs in her face and warns that John Hao will find out that she made her mother marry his father just so she could become his sister. She threatens, saying that John Hao is a different person and not her toy. Now Kin fell silent and sighed, saying that if she discovered all this, she must be rich and powerful. However, she says she understands that Wei probably tried to win over John Hao with money, but it didn't work. She adds that it's a shame, but John Hao will never truly like her. The two stand in silence, staring at each other. Wei claps her hands, saying it's expected from the girl who threatened teachers when she was 7 years old. She then decides to introduce herself, saying her name is Wei Man from the Feng Hong Company. Shin immediately recognizes the name of the company. Wei informs her that she called her there because she had promised John Hao that she wouldn't hurt his family. But if she crossed the line again, the family matter would be set aside. Kin realized she had just received a death threat. As Wei walks past her, she asks if she really knows the Zhang Hao she likes, leaving the girl in silence. Kin punches the table in a fit of rage. The scene shifts back home. Zhang Hao is slowly opening his eyes. He gets up and sees his sister beside him working on the computer. He asks what's going on, and she just wants to know if he's still feeling uncomfortable, mentioning that she brought a hot water bottle for him. She then says that while he was sleeping, she read the entire novel he wrote. She found the world he described to be quite interesting and realistic. Embarrassed, he says he only wrote those things to stand out among others and make more money. His sister remarks that it felt too real, and that the protagonist really seemed like a real girl. She warns him not to confuse fiction with reality because real life is different, handing him the hot water bottle and saying it will make him feel better. She then hugs him, telling him that if he has any problems, he can always tell her because she's worried about him. The scene changes to the next day at school. Standing next to Yuha, he's thinking about how strange his sister was the day before. During the day, she seemed normal, but when she came back at night, something had changed. Yuha hands him something and he thanks her, saying he'll keep it instead of the jewelry. She immediately says she has another gift and offers him some lunch. Embarrassed, he tells her she doesn't need to be so considerate. However, she says she just wants to be nicer to him. He tells her it's okay as long as she doesn't keep giving him expensive jewelry. She then asks if his family hates her now because of it. He reassures her that's not the case and she doesn't need to worry. But she expresses that she often feels like she makes people's lives worse when she interacts with them. She questions whether she's just a friend who brings problems, but he tells her not to worry because he values their friendship. She then says that even if his family doesn't like her, it won't affect their friendship. Zhang Hao explains that his family likes her, they just don't want them getting romantically involved. Yubat explains that she feels like his sister, on the other hand, doesn't like her at all and seems to want to keep them apart. Zhang Hao has no idea what happened, so he just thinks she's being insecure. He stands up, telling her she doesn't need to change or try to please anyone. She will still be his friend, and she doesn't need to rush to prove anything. This cheers her up a bit, and she explains that recently she at least learned to swim. He says if that's the case, they can have fun over the weekend. The scene changes to a sunny day. Our boy was walking around the city when someone called out to him. It was Yuva, all dressed up. Our boy felt better, wondering why she had dressed up so much. He tells her they can start their outing. With that, she pulls out a giant notebook full of things she wants to do with him. Our boy wonders why she seems so prepared, and she starts listing a bunch of things they need to do today, mentioning she even bought tickets for a movie called Season of Love. He says he's confused because he expected her to want to watch a war drama. However, she says no, she chose this because she's sure it's his favorite. With that, he takes her hand, saying it's okay, and that he'll be happy no matter what she chooses, thanking her for being so thoughtful. She just holds his hand in agreement. With that, they head to the cinema. Yuva stands there, a bit lost. Jang Hao asks what's wrong and tells her to snap out of it. She brings the popcorn, looking a bit awkward, saying she didn't expect there to be so many people there. The scene then cuts to the two of them watching the movie. Our boy hands her a juice. Jang Hao comments that she seems happy, and she explains that despite the crowd, there's plenty of space. As she enjoys the juice, he receives a call. That's something, huh? Our boy makes a face, clearly not pleased, and without a doubt, he declines the call. Yua asks what's going on, and he says it's nothing important, thinking that since she's so happy, he'll make the most of his time with her. Our boy is just watching, thinking the movie is awful because it's clearly upside down. Then a little hand grabs his. He asks if she wants popcorn. She says no, so he hands her the juice, saying that must be it. But the girl is nearly exploding with embarrassment. She says she saw in a guide that this is the step before a kiss and asks if he agrees. Jang Hao plays it cool, asking if she learned this strategy from Yuan Yuan. She says no, it's just that they haven't done this in a while. And now our boy is about to explode. She says she likes him a lot and that they could be a couple. Our boy tries to explain that he likes her too, but not in a romantic way, and she can't be so dependent. She explains that she's just following the guide she read, which said girls needed to take more initiative. With that, she pulled his face, while he was worried because it was a public place. She said she would save money and leaned in to whisper something to him, who was about to explode, unsure of what to do. Then he held her hand and suggested they focus on watching the movie. Time passed, and I'm not sure what happened, but she looked exhausted, talking about the guide. He said he had to see this guide and her strategies, then grabbed her hand to read it. She was a bit confused. He glanced at her plans, then lightly hit her head, asking why she didn't just ask instead of acting like this. Embarrassed, she said she just wanted to be there with him, and he could do whatever he wanted. Jang Hao thought she was always extremely careful, but then confiscated her little book, saying it was time for some real fun. The scene changes to a sports internet cafe. The poor girl stood in front of the computer, unsure of what to do. He asked if she'd never been to an internet cafe before, and she said her family doesn't allow it. He then asked her not to tell anyone or he'd get in trouble. With that, the boy started playing, already scoring a pentakill. She said she was trying to understand, but it was too difficult. He explained that he just wanted her to have fun, saying that since she already had good grades and a good family, the only thing he could do was help her be happy. He then opened another game, apparently a shooting game, and explained the controls for moving the character and aiming for a headshot. He congratulated her, thinking her family must be very good for someone who just started playing. He also thought that given her interest in weapons, this type of game was obviously a good fit for her. After a while, he said their time was up. She asked why he didn't put more money in so she could play more, but the boy warned her not to get addicted or she'd spend her whole life on it. As they walked down the street, they were chatting until he mentioned that her phone was ringing. She answered and seemed to agree with something. It seemed like she was talking about leaving, but in reality, she wanted to keep playing with our boy. He thought to himself that he would help her have even more fun today. With that, they played the drum game, the dance game, and the shooting game. Later, as they were heading back, she said it was one of the happiest days she ever had. Jang Hao told her not to take it too seriously because it's something they could do anytime, and she was all smiles, saying she understood. As they were walking, a car suddenly passed in front of them. As soon as the door opened, he knew trouble was coming. He thought it might be Anao, but it was actually Yuya's butler, who turned to our boy and said her parents wanted to meet him. Her mother, it seems, was looking into information about Jang Hao, smiling, though it wasn't clear if it was out of joy or anger, knowing that her daughter had been ignoring messages while having fun. Meanwhile, Jang Hao had no idea they had planned a party for her at the mansion, but she preferred to stay with him. At the door, the butler told him not to worry, as the master was not someone who regretted visits. As soon as Jang Hao entered, he saw the mother standing there, or perhaps the father, as it wasn't clear who was who, and was asked to sit down. Our boy thanked them and realized it was the father, as he thought the man looked very young. At the table, the father asked if Yua had fun, and she said yes. He then told her to go take a bath because her clothes were dirty, and he turned to Jang Hao, saying they could have lunch together. He mentioned he'd heard that our boy had been making her very happy and wanted to thank Jang Hao as her father. Our protagonist, very polite, said it was just a matter of friendship, but he noticed the thank you seemed somewhat insincere. It seems Jang Hao wasn't very well liked there. The father then asked how much money he wanted to stay away from Yuha. The boy wondered why the plot always seemed to take this turn. He told Zhang Hao that she had missed a family gathering because of him, and our boy was confused by the sudden change in attitude. He apologized, saying he had no idea she had a family event that day. The father said he was misunderstanding, and in fact he wanted to thank him for that. He offered a card, but Zhang Hao refused, saying he didn't want money in exchange for friendship. The father asked if things weren't obvious enough, saying it would be rude to spell it out further. Zhang Hao, now at a loss for words but growing angry, explained that everyone seemed to think he only cared about money. He told her father that he was mistaken, saying that he was getting to know Yuha gradually and realized she was a good person, just not good at expressing herself. He became friends with her because of her honesty and kindness, not because of money. He acknowledged the difference between their families but insisted he was only interested in being her friend, returning the card to her father, who gave a small smile. The man placed his teacup on the table, saying it was good to be young, and mentioned he'd heard that Yuha had brought Zhang Hao over for a night. He assumed the boy was selling himself. Our boy felt devastated, knowing that if he revealed who wanted to destroy whom, the father would go crazy. At that moment, the father, slightly crazy, commented that the boy had a face that could destroy countries. Embarrassed, Zhang Hao complimented him back, saying he was very handsome. The father thanked him, saying he was an interesting boy, and then asked him to continue being a good friend to Yuha. Zhang Hao agreed, saying it would be easy. A scene changed to the exit as the father was leaving. He mentioned that he would prepare another banquet for his daughter, but advised her to be more careful. Yuha said she understood, but noted she was out with Zhang Hao, who was her friend. The father smiled and said that if that was the case, she should value friendships. In front of Yuha, he asked Zhang Hao if they were really just going to remain friends and never be a couple. Poor Zhang Hao fell silent, unsure of how to respond. He turned to the father and said he understood perfectly and would avoid any contact. The butler then appeared and told Zhang Hao that it was time to go. The father told Zhang Hao that it seemed there was nothing to worry about, but before leaving, he instructed the butler to keep an eye on the two. Our boy was exhausted, and Yuha asked if her father had caused any trouble. He says everything's fine and that it must just be fatherly love. And he checks his phone and is startled. He has a series of missed messages. The scene changes to his home. It's nighttime as he's returning. Kin, who is soon going to have liver problems, is, as usual, a bit drunk. Embarrassed, Zhang Hao approaches and asks why she's drinking alone. She simply asks why he hasn't been answering his phone. At that moment, he knows he's in trouble for ignoring those calls. He starts making excuses, saying he had it on silent. But she ignores that and just asks if he had fun with his classmate. Embarrassed, he says he did but shouldn't have ignored the calls. Kin says it's fine, but he'll have to make up for today by spending time with her tomorrow. She tells him that he has to talk to the platform people tomorrow. She says it's perfect because they can go to the mall together and can sort out that issue. She tells him to take a shower and just agrees, while Kin thinks that with these two competitors, she'll have to be more aggressive. The scene shifts to the next day. Someone says they're embarrassed to have asked to meet him on the weekend. Our boy responds to Song, saying it's no problem. She says that his fan base isn't small anymore and that he needs to appeal to his new fans. She hands him a tablet with a streaming auction for him. As soon as he sees that it's for him to act like a fool in a kimono, he says he's not that type of streamer. She then shares a second photo of a night cosplay, saying you won't have to show much skin. He agrees, saying the second auction is more acceptable. But he's shocked when she says that, in that case, they're doing it now. Before he can react, she's already got the camera in hand, telling him to take a look. With no other option, he's soon dressed as a knight, posing for the photo. What he didn't expect was a crowd watching, and apparently, this video was already recorded and shown to someone. During a meeting, the girl comments that it's a great place to invest because that cosplayer alone attracted a lot of people. However, people are thinking that the cosplayer is very handsome until he realizes he's being filmed by a drone sending footage to the meeting. At that moment, the signal is disconnected. She apologizes, saying she'll send someone to investigate, but someone in the meeting says they'll handle it themselves. It's Wainan, who says that since he destroyed the drone, he'll have to pay the price. Later, our boy is exhausted because it took forever to take all those photos. He hears someone knocking on the door and asks if it's his sister. But when he opens the door, it's Wainan, arms crossed. He tries to close the door, but she blocks it, saying it seems like he's really trying to ignore her. She glares at him, asking if she has to break into the house. He reluctantly invites her in. Sitting on the couch in business attire, she asks why he hasn't been responding to her for the past 2 days. Embarrassed and trying to cover it up, he says the day was very busy and offers her some tea. She just laughs in his face, asking why he's dressed like that, and if he really thinks it's good to earn money this way. He says she wouldn't understand, thinking to himself that she once wanted him to be a streamer for her company. She asks why he wants to continue streaming if she already told him she'd pay much more. But our boy, tearing up, says a man has to earn his own money. She just laughs, saying she agrees with that, and pulling him by the collar, says they need to resolve the drone issue. He's flustered, asking if that was her company's drone. As he's about to talk about money, she says she knows a better way to compensate. Before he can respond, she kisses him. She helps him catch his breath and tells him that the outfit suits him well. Our otaku boy jokes that she would look good with cat ears. She asks if he wants to see her wearing them and warns that he'd have to kill her first. Out of nowhere, the boy becomes energetic and gives a playful drum tap. She looks confused, and with 50 kilograms of muscle, he lifts Wei. She comments on his courage to lift her in such an embarrassing way. He admits he has courage but can't hold her up for long because he's already trembling. He asks her to get down and she says he might collapse to the ground. She then remarks it's a shame he failed the counterattack. Our boy is disheartened, realizing his body is indeed very weak. Wei tells him that in terms of strength, he stands no chance. She helps him catch his breath once more. Half an hour later, our boy is exhausted and worn out, while Wei Man, still radiant, talks about the red moon that only appears after a solar eclipse. Zhang Hao is curious, knowing this phenomenon occurs only once every 14 months. She explains that there's another type of lunar eclipse influencing the red moon, and that her investigations suggest this new eclipse is related to the red moon. Zhang Hao becomes intrigued, thinking this might relate to how his body ended up in this world. As his sister arrives back home, the two of them look back and Zhang Hao is startled. Kin's groceries fall to the floor and she, surprised, asks Zhang Hao what he's doing. She thinks to herself that she must be going crazy to see him like this. She questions why he's dressed that way, and he explains it's for a stream he's doing. She understands it's work while thinking he looks amazing. He says he's going to take a shower because he's tired. She offers to give him a massage later. He suddenly stops and calls her, saying it'll be difficult to remove all the tied-up clothes and that he needs help. Of course, Kin doesn't refuse such an offer. He's suffering, dying of heat, asking her to take it off quickly, while he thinks to himself it's good that Wei didn't try to escape. As she helps him undress, he remarks he felt like a canned tuna. She notices his sweaty back and feels a bit uncomfortable. He says he smells bad, but she says it's a pleasant smell, hugging him and saying he looks handsome in that cosplay. She teases that if he did more cosplay, she might stop liking women. She's excited when he mentions he'll have to do maid cosplays for live streams. With that, he goes to take a shower, thinking it would be good to make her like men. But then someone coughs in the bathroom. When he looks back, Wei is not standing there staring. Poor guy. As he's about to say something, his sister asks what the problem is. He quickly tells Wei not to stay silent and turns to his sister, saying he stubbed his toe, but is okay. She asks if he needs help, and he insists he's fine and she doesn't need to come in. He asks Wei why she didn't use the chance to escape. The warrior isn't paying much attention and just asks how he can be shirtless without any change in expression. He calls her weird for acting like a pervert hiding in someone else's bathroom. As he leaves, Wei remarks that it's interesting he has a sister who wants to try various cosplays and reminds him that his sister isn't so simple. Zhang Hao tells her not to worry. On the other side, Kin calls him to come quickly to drink some milk and get a massage. Wei stands up angrily, saying he indeed has a very caring sister, now certain this woman has some evil plan. She storms out, saying it would be good for him to visit her tomorrow afternoon, otherwise she'll have to come back to deal with things. The scene shifts to the Wei family villa. The usually stern boss is cooking this time. Our boy is already there, complimenting her, saying she's impressive. He approaches, offering to help her cook, saying she doesn't need to do it alone. She tells him not to worry because it's normal to cook for the boy one likes. He blushes and tells her to stop with the subtle hints. She gets closer and says it's rare to see a cute boy like him who knows how to cook. He replies that unfortunately he had to live alone for many years, so he learned. Just then, his pan starts burning. She pulls his face towards her, telling him to be careful. Embarrassed, he apologizes, saying it's been a long time since he cooked. He steps back, thinking he never imagined she had this side. A while later, the banquet was ready. She says she wanted to see his reaction when he tried it. Our boy was hesitant, unsure of what to expect. He tried the food and said it was very good. The competitor then asked if it was better than Kin's cooking. He said there was no comparison because Kin was family. Wei Nan questioned if he really thought they were family. Zhang Hao affirmed that he did and was very happy to be her brother. However, Wei Nan remarked that if Kin were so good, she wouldn't pretend to like women just to get close to him. Zhang Hao argued that it didn't make sense for her to pretend that, given how much she cared about what others thought of her, and that he genuinely liked Kin. Wei then questioned if he liked her, to which Zhang Hao firmly responded that he did. We started getting angry, calling Kin a formidable competitor. She leaned back and told him to go ahead and eat. He asked her to stop getting involved with his family if they were to continue their cooperation. Wei was convinced that while he considered Kin family, she saw him as a toy and the place he called home was nothing but a lie. We then see some things the secretary discovered. It appears that Zhang Hao's father's marriage to Kin's mother was orchestrated by Kin herself. In other words, it was all a tactic to get close to Zhang Hao. Upon hearing this, Wei Nan was certain she couldn't let someone like that stay by his side. A while later, she watched him leave through the window and grabbed her phone with a wicked plan. She made a comment about Kin in the conversation, saying things would change when Zhang Hao learned she wasn't really his sister. The scene shifts to Kin at home looking up at the sky. She says the time is coming. A while later, Zhang Hao arrives and asks why she left work early. She says their parents aren't home, so she wanted to arrive first. However, she feels disheartened when she sees that Yuha is also there. Yuha greets her, and Zhang Hao says she doesn't need to be so formal. Kin wants to know why he brought someone home without informing her. He apologizes, explaining that he's doing this because of Yuha's social difficulties. Excited, Yuha says she even changed her shoes. Jong Hao invites Yuha to go upstairs, and Kim Kien says she'll bring some food, though she's fuming inside, thinking that this girl is ruining her plans. In the room, Yuha compliments the smell, which confuses Jong Hao. Jong Hao offers to give her whatever she wants. At this moment, Yuna starts rummaging through a drawer, pulls out a pair of smoking Pikachu underwear, and says she'll take that. Just then, Kin Kin enters the room with some juice. She sees the underwear and looks disheartened. Poor Jong Hao tries to explain, saying she shouldn't misunderstand. Seated with both of them, Kin Kin says she understood perfectly what was happening. Jong Hao tries to explain that Yuha is just socially awkward and not a pervert. Kin Kin decides the best plan from now on is to reduce the amount of time the two spend alone together. She invites Yuha to her room, saying she wants to show her something cool. Yuha thanks her, saying she's very kind. But when Kin Kin suggests watching a movie that girls love, Jong Hao gets a bit confused. He pulls Yuha aside, saying it's not a good idea to teach her those things. Kin Kin reassures him, saying she will only talk about girl stuff, then tries to pull Yuha along, saying she will teach her what a girl needs to do. Jong Hao, confused, asks if Kin Kin is interested in Yuha. Suddenly, Kin Kin falls silent and insists that she definitely isn't. Jong Hao was a bit confused, and suddenly, Kin Kin threw herself onto him, putting her hand on the back of his neck. She noticed he was out of breath and gave him some air, while Yuha was almost crushed. A moment later, he pushed Kin Kin away and asked what she was doing. Poor Yuha had nearly suffocated. Then Kin Kin suddenly admitted that she lied to him. The scene shifts to a taxi in front of the house. Jong Hao says goodbye to Yuha and apologizes for his sister. Yuha says she just felt a bit breathless. A little embarrassed, Jong Hao explains that it's his sister's way of showing she cares and considers mentioning what she had seen. However, Yuha doesn't seem to fully understand the situation. He dismisses it and tells her to be careful on the way home. As the taxi drives off, Yuha rummages through her bag, finds the gift Jong Hao gave her, and wonders if he really prefers Kin Kin, who is now standing at the door, just staring at him. Jong Hao, a bit startled, turns and calls out to her, but then he remembers that Yuha didn't say anything and realizes she might not have lied. He asks Kin Kin if she really doesn't like women. She stands there in silence without responding until, a bit embarrassed, she admits she doesn't. She then shockingly confesses that she lied because she likes him too much. She tries to explain that she likes him so much that she knew no one would understand, so she acted this way. Now that he's discovered the truth, he's a bit confused, saying it's a bit strange. She steps out into the rain, saying she understands it's weird, but just wanted to be close to him, and reveals that she doesn't want to lose him again. Jong Hao tells her to calm down or she'll catch a cold, and asks if she's referring to their childhood. She says yes, but knows he doesn't remember much, while thinking to herself that she'll do anything to stay with him. She then reveals to him that she has secretly always been close to him, from elementary school to now, and has never left his side. She admits she likes him so much that she has been doing foolish things. Just then, Wei Nan appears, saying she arrived at the right time. She calls Kin Kin and informs Jong Hao that, as he can see, Kin Kin was never really his family. Jong Hao is shocked to learn that Wei Nan knew about this and had this conversation with him. He feels downcast as Wei Nan says Kin Kin has been lying from the beginning and urges him to come with her, warning that he might forget who he was in the past. Kin Kin yells at Wei Nan to get away from their house, but Jong Hao calls out to his sister. Kin Kin turns and tells him not to worry, assuring him she'll handle it. However, Jong Hao hands her the umbrella, looking disheartened, and tells her to go inside first. He says he'll leave for now and give her an answer later. Kin Kin stands there, confused and unsure of what just happened. The scene changes to Wei Nan's apartment, where she tells Jong Hao not to catch a cold. She hands him a towel, but he's just standing there in silence. The two stand quietly for a while before he asks if she really needs to reveal his true identity to his sister. She dries his hair and asks if he truly believes his sister is innocent. Wei Nan goes to a book and says if he really wants to know the truth, he should take a look at it. Jong Hao looks at all the records they gathered on Kin Kin and starts to get scared by what he finds. When they were younger, she would get any girl who talked to him. This behavior continued as they got older. Even though she was accepted into a much better university, she chose to stay in the city to stay close to him. It turns out that her mother's marriage to his father was orchestrated by Kin Kin to get closer to him. Sun Hao asks how this is possible. Wei Nan, a bit unhinged, comments that she admires how far Kin Kin's love has gone. The poor boy sweats coldly, not understanding what this crazy woman is saying either. Wei Nan approaches and says that normally those being pursued never really understand. She takes out a cigarette and says she'll try to explain clearly, noting that in his world, it's usually men who pursue women. In this case, all she did was try her best, going to great lengths to follow and interfere in his life, affecting his social status and even his family. Wei Nan asks if what she's done is perverse or not. Sun Hao stands there, poor thing, unable to say anything. Wei Nan extends her hand, saying that if he comes with her, he can forget these problems and study the red moon. Sun Hao, scared, says he can't think straight and needs to go home first. She offers to take him, but he insists that it's okay and he can manage on his own. With that, he leaves without saying anything more. On his way home, he keeps thinking about how strange and frightening his sister is having done all those things. What he finds odd is that fragments of his memory suggest she's not that kind of person. He has no idea which version of himself she likes, and this kind of thing can only be discussed face to face. The boy returns home to find her standing in the rain. She is desolate, still unable to recover from the shock. Even when he approaches, she can't understand anything until he offers her an umbrella. Confused, she looks up, and the boy, all cute, says he's back. Her expression changes, and she welcomes him back warmly. Once inside, she says she'll warm up some tea for him. She starts talking about a lot of things she wants to do, but he tells her she doesn't need to try so hard and says there's something he wants to ask. She trembles, asking if there's a problem and if Wainan said something about her. He mentions that it seems like in her childhood, what she did was more than just staying close to him. Kin realizes her past has been revealed and turns away, startled, saying it seems he knows everything. Zhang Hao explains that even though Wainan might not be unscrupulous, all the evidence seemed too real. Kin starts trembling, unable to speak, and collapses to the floor, not knowing what to do. She calls his name and says she needs to tell a story. She talks about a girl who was happy until one day her parents divorced and all the joy disappeared. The father soon found another family, and she lived with her mother for a while. But life in that new family wasn't enjoyable, and her former family couldn't complain about anything. The girl had to live on the streets for 2 weeks before her mother came to pick her up again. Since then, she began isolating herself from everyone until a boy invited her to play. She ignored him, but he kept following her, suggesting they have lunch together. She remembers the other boys telling him not to talk to her, but whenever he saw her alone, he approached and invited her to play, always cheerful and smiling. That's how the boy entered her heart. But then an accident happened, and the girl made a mistake that caused the boy to lose his memory and be sent to another school. The light in her life disappeared again. However, instead of giving up, she decided to secretly protect his life. Eventually, she realized that the distance wasn't enough, and that's when she began the plan of using her mother to become his sister. Crying, she admits she knows it was wrong and that the plan was a disaster. Zhang Hao wonders if this is how she feels about the real owner of this body. She apologizes, calling herself possessive, and reveals that she is, of course, the girl in the story. She says she expects him to hate her for this, but all she ever wanted was to have him to herself and not share him with anyone else. The boy starts to think that even though they aren't related by blood, she really takes good care of him, and he also likes Kin. She says if he really thinks she's disgusting, she'll stay away and never bother him again. But then the boy says she doesn't need to apologize. He understands how valuable she is, and that's enough for him. He tells her they can be together because he likes her too. What a thing for him to say. Now she's going to go crazy. She hugs him, saying that no matter what happens, she still loves him. And our boy, awkwardly, tells her she's getting snot all over his shirt. With that, she gives him a UFC-style hug. She threw the boy to the ground and, as always, helped him catch his breath. As he lay there, he thought to himself that this felt like a first love. The time they spent together was sweet. Being around her always made him happy. She always wanted the best for him. She mentioned that her life felt like a dream, and she was incredibly happy. Meanwhile, he felt increasingly guilty, knowing that her connection was with the past Zhang Hao, not with him. She then said she would go downstairs to prepare dinner and call him when it was ready. He was left deep in thought, realizing that he was taking advantage of her feelings. He wondered how she would react when he told her the truth. He called out to her, and she turned around to ask what it was. He hesitated, especially when she smiled and asked if the baby was having a problem. Feeling foolish, he said it was nothing important and told her she could go make dinner. Obviously, he lacked the courage to tell her the truth. The scene changes to Fenghong Enterprises. Zhang Hao is there again, and Wainan comments that their meeting was very good. Zhang Hao doesn't seem very enthusiastic and asks her to get to the point. She crosses her leg and says she wants to ask him something. She asks how the conversation with his sister went. Zhang Hao uncrosses his leg and says they're doing fine. Wainan questions what he means by fine and accuses him of deceiving her since she knows the person his sister likes isn't the current Zhang Hao. She suggests that eventually Kin will discover he isn't the person she truly fell in love with, and who knows what she'll do then. Hesitant, Zhang Hao says he can't predict the future. Wainan, observing his troubled mental state, thinks that if things continue this way, she'll have to take matters into her own hands. She changes the subject and talks about his career as a streamer, presenting a proposal. She mentions that he's in the top 3 on the platform and should realize there's a limit to being an internet celebrity. She hands him a paper, suggesting that if he really wants to make money, he should have his own products. It's a clothing brand idea. He asks if this is just her idea. She says she doesn't care about other investors, but she has never lost money. She explains that her research on the Red Moon has been costing her, so this is the least he can do to help her recoup some losses. Zhang Hao agrees not to pay with flesh and blood, but if it's a matter of time, he can help a bit and promises to repay her for all the help she's given him. He then asks what style of clothing she has in mind, and she tells him to be independent and create his own style. Later, as he leaves, she thinks to herself that with her strategies, it will be easy to manipulate him. Her plan for now is to keep him busy with his career, as he's the type of man who enjoys making money. This way, he'll be more independent from Miss Kin Kin, and she can use her influence to pull him away from his sister. Later, Jong Hao returns home. Kiki asks if he's busy and tells him not to spend too much time on that clothing company. Jong Hao reassures her not to worry because they're helping him a lot. However, she knows very well that this clothing company is undoubtedly connected to Wai Nan. She calls him over and says that now that they're together, he doesn't need to work so hard because she will support him. Just then, their mother appears and says it's time to let her brother sleep, starting to notice that something is strange. Jong Hao thinks that lately she's been taking good care of him. Even though they've been spending less time together, she always cheers him up. If he wanted, this life he's living could last forever. The scene changes to the next day. Jong Hao is exhausted, sitting in his school chair, when Yuna comes over to ask what's wrong. He says he's fine but seems down. He explains that he's just tired because he's been working on creating a clothing brand. As he was about to mention needing a professional model, he sees her standing there and gets a perfect idea. He tells her he'll need a favor after school. The scene changes to a photo shoot session where they're taking pictures of Yua for the clothing catalog. Someone comments that the girl has potential and could even join the company. Suddenly, Kin Kin shows up, complimenting Jong Hao on his good work. He asks her what she's doing there, and she says she brought some treats for her favorite person. The people around think she's very beautiful and friendly. Then someone else arrives, questioning why there are so many people there. Kin Kin wants to know who invited this person. It's obviously Wai Nan, who claims she's there as an investor to supervise. Kin Kin retorts, calling Wai a capitalist here to oversee her slave. Wai Nan retorts, saying it's better to be a boss than a fake family member. Jong Hao watches from afar as the two bicker. He tries to calm them down, but Yua invites him to eat something. At that moment, both women stop and turn angrily, asking why Yua is the model for his products. Embarrassed, he tries to explain that it seemed like the best idea. Suddenly, the women start competing, with Wai Nan putting on lipstick and Kin Kin donning another outfit. Clearly, both wanted to compete for the role of his model. Confused, Jong Hao, with the camera in hand, asks why he has to do this. Wai Nan insists that only he has the honor of photographing her. Once again, the two start arguing while Jong Hao doesn't know what to do. He asks them to stop so they can finish early, and now even Yuho wants to pose for the photos. Kin Kin sits and tells Yuha to put her hand in her hair, excited at how photogenic she is. He tells Wai Nan to sit in the chair and smile, feeling excited. Seeing why, he decides it's best not to give her any instructions, fearing backlash. However, seeing that she's not posing properly, he tells her to stretch her leg, feeling thrilled to be ordering a CEO around like this. Time passed as he took the photos, while Yuha watched the competition between the girls. At the end, he thanked everyone and offered to treat them to dinner later. Once again, they were competing for his attention, leaving him unsure how to handle it. He decided to let them figure it out and not get involved anymore. Later, back at home, the product link and the page were working well. He felt a bit insecure since it was his first business venture, but with everything set up, he had no choice. He started the live stream and there were 17,000 viewers. He mentioned the shopping cart in the right corner and invited those interested to check out his products. What he didn't know was that most of the women watching weren't pleased with this. Even his biggest fans started saying that the image of the perfect idol was breaking. Some commenters mentioned that this move was a misstep. While some in the chat supported him, the majority criticized him. A few people recognized Wai Nan, and even at Kin Kin's workplace, she was also recognized. The boy's popularity was growing, reaching 125,000 viewers. People were looking at the designs, noting they were unique and asking if he had created them. Of course, he had borrowed all the ideas from the world he came from, which is why he decided to launch fashionable women's clothing. As viewers saw the prices, public opinion started to shift positively. Wai Nan was excited, noting that it seemed like it would be a success. Wei, eager to help, planned to buy a ton of products to boost sales. In no time, sales went from 1 to 123,000 in total. Jong Hao was confused by what was happening. He knew there was a chance for things to go well, but this was over the top. Later, he was online and noticed many posts about him. People were even sharing the clothes he wore, claiming it was the new fashion trend. He just wanted to watch some videos to relax, but all he saw were ads for his own products. He couldn't believe that in less than a day, everything had sold out. He concluded that the girls had probably done something. The atmosphere wasn't great when the three were together. Someone approached and asked what he was complaining about. Jong Hao, embarrassed, wondered when she had arrived. She gave him a hug and guessed he was confused because his company had done well and he wasn't sure what the next step should be. He turned and said he wasn't prepared. She reassured him that he didn't need to work so hard and that she would support whatever decision he made. Embarrassed, our boy thanked her and mentioned he was planning a celebration party and invited her. She accepted but said she would take a bath first. In the bath, she pondered why he was throwing a party to celebrate. She was sure that Wai Nan and Yuha would definitely be there. She realized she needed to clarify her relationship with Jong Hao to keep the others away. She knew this would make things harder for Jong Hao and decided she might follow a more aggressive plan. The scene changes to the celebration banquet. The girls are all there waiting for our boy, who arrives with his sister, saying they didn't need to dress up so much. The three women immediately start to dislike each other, and he suggests they find a table. Even while serving food, they compete, likely to see who would serve him first, leaving Zhang Hao unsure of what to do. He decides to drink a bit while the two are at each other's throats. Eventually, he goes outside to throw up, realizing his body is weak and sensitive to alcohol. Someone brings him a towel. He thanks them while wiping his mouth, only to be shocked when he sees the girl from the Red Moon, who says it's been a while since they've seen each other and calls him Dear Zhang Hao. Surprised, he asks if she is the goddess of the Red Moon. She confirms and pulls him by the chin, commenting on how well he's adapted to life in this world. She praises his successful business and a partner who loves him dearly. However, she asks if he hasn't noticed that he's becoming more like a native of this world. She warns him that he will assimilate at this rate and reveals a secret. Human souls can merge. Confused, he asks what she means by merging souls and insists that he won't assimilate. She says the choice is his and that they'll meet again when all this is over. As he yells for her to wait, she disappears in front of him. Now he's confused about this merging of souls and assimilation. Yue appears and asks if he's okay. He says he is, and she informs him that the two women are fighting inside. He suggests they go back inside before the two kill each other, but he doesn't mention the Red Moon or another world. A while later, Zhang Hao's life had returned to normal. He didn't have as much time to spend with Qin, but their relationship was more stable. 2 months later, autumn arrived. Yu and Yuwon complained that it was too cold like winter. Zhang Hao was nearby, just looking at his phone, when she approached and asked which girl he was talking to. He told her to respect his privacy and long said that as a celebrity, he wouldn't talk to just any girl. Yue then arrived and greeted Zhang Hao. Later, back in class, the teacher announced the school's 50th anniversary was coming up. She said there would be a dance involving a boy and a girl, and everyone would have to participate. After the pairs were formed, they had to practice for 2 weeks. The teacher informed Zhang Hao that he would be the leader since he had experience dealing with the public. Immediately, all the girls in the class wanted to be invited to dance with him. Within a second, a discussion broke out and he was surrounded. Frustrated, he shouted for everyone to step back. He went to the bathroom, thinking how exhausting it was to live like this. He thought about who to ask and Sue decided on Yuha. However, she turned him down. He was taken aback as it was the first time this month he'd been rejected. Feeling down, he sat in a corner. Yuha tried to explain, saying she didn't want to draw attention and feared being too uncoordinated, causing him embarrassment. Suddenly, he called her name and told her she couldn't live like that. He said that people who give up without even trying will never succeed. He admitted he didn't know how to dance either, but was willing to learn and asked her to trust him one more time. The scene changes to their first practice. Someone, likely the teacher, told them to relax. The teacher, sweating, instructed Yue to put her hand on Zhang Hao's waist and stop being so shy. He reassured her, saying there was no need to be so nervous. She apologized for not being very good, but he told her it was fine as long as she kept practicing. The tired teacher said that was enough for today and that they would continue the training tomorrow. Zhang Hao observed her, exhausted, thinking it was funny how flexible she was in fighting, but he felt like someone was always watching them. Yue then called him, saying her locker seemed stuck because it wouldn't open. They found that something had been put in the lock to prevent it from turning. Later, they called a school employee, but Zhang Hao realized that someone had targeted Yuha. The next day after physical education class, Long praised Zhang Hao and asked how the dances were going. Then he noticed something in Yuha's shoe. He pulled her aside and a bunch of tacks fell out. Seeing this, he knew she would have hurt her foot. He shouted, asking who had the nerve to do such a thing. His two friends were furious, calling it ridiculous, while everyone around remained silent. Zhang Hao wondered if this was related to the dance. He knew someone's intention was to make Yuha quit, and he was determined to find out who it was. The following morning, he approached Yuha and asked if she had offended anyone recently. He advised her to be careful. Suddenly, he saw a bucket heading towards her head. In a heroic act, he put his head in the way, taking the hit himself. A drop of blood fell on Yuha's face, but Zhang Hao, seemingly unfazed, asked if she was okay. He turned to shout at whoever was above them, but Yuha warned him to be careful. Ignoring her, he ran upstairs, determined to find the culprit. He opened the door to the upper floor and found a girl crying, saying she didn't want to hurt him, she just didn't like Yuha monopolizing him. Zhang Hao said nothing as she continued shouting that Yuha didn't deserve to have him all to herself. The girl seemed to go mad, lamenting that she shouldn't have hurt him. Immediately, Zhang Hao ran to her, grabbed her arm, and pinned her to the ground, telling her to stop this nonsense. He sternly told her to stop getting involved, saying it was up to him to decide who deserved to be with him. The girl stayed silent, just listening. Then Yuha appeared, crying and running towards him. However, Zhang Hao's vision began to blur. He couldn't understand what was happening or why he couldn't see clearly. At that moment, he seemed to recall various situations. It wasn't clear if these were alternate timelines or perhaps memories of the body's previous owner. A while later, he slowly opens his eyes in the hospital, wondering if the scenes he just experienced were hallucinations. Yua calls out to him, saying that he finally woke up and apologizes for causing him to get hurt. However, she assures him not to worry because she will take revenge for him. She even says that the other girl will pay dearly. At that moment, Zhang Hao sits up, insisting that he's in good health. and that they should get back to practice. He advises her not to seek revenge as it would only cause more trouble, reminding her that she promised to impress everyone. For the next 2 weeks, they continued practicing. Jong Hao even hired a professional dance instructor. Yuha gradually became more confident. However, during one of the training sessions, she received a call from her mother. Jong Hao pondered over it since he had only met her father so far. During the call, her mother revealed that she had already spoken to the teacher to prevent Yuha from participating, urging her to quit to avoid embarrassing the Min family in front of important people. Yuha tried to explain that people depended on her and that she had been practicing for a long time. Her mother insisted it would be better not to disgrace the family. The poor girl was at a loss for words until Jong Hao took the phone from her hand. He first apologized for his behavior and then pleaded for her to let Yuha participate, explaining that she had been working hard and would not embarrass anyone. Suddenly, Yuha grabbed the phone and shouted that she would not give up, saying goodbye to her mother and ending the call. She turned to Jong Hao and apologized, insisting that he had to participate. He thought to himself that she was impressive when she was serious. The scene shifts to the day of the performance. The announcer declares it the school's 20th anniversary. Yuha's mother is present, as is Wei Nan, attending as a renowned entrepreneur from the city. The school representative announces the start of the event. The curtains open and a tango tune plays. The two participants exchange a quick glance and start their dance. Yuha's mother watches while Jong Hao feels confident about her performance. The audience praises them, and Wei Nan looks displeased. Yuha's mother begins to wonder what caused such a change in her daughter, who she remembered as not being so confident. Suddenly, the stage lights go out. Jong Hao is confused because this wasn't part of the plan. The audience questions if this is part of the performance. The school representative calls out to Jong Hao. He asks what happened, and she explains that there was a problem with the circuits, which would take 20 minutes to fix. He protests, saying it would be foolish to leave the audience with nothing to do for 20 minutes. They would all leave. He worried that Yuha would lose the chance to impress her mother. A friend next to her mother remarked that her daughter seemed lost in this emergency, while the mother just watched to see what would happen. The teacher was about to announce a 20-minute intermission, but Jong Hao grabbed her megaphone and confidently declared that they were always prepared for anything. Meanwhile, backstage, Long Long was trying to come up with a solution. Then Wei Nan appeared, asking if they needed help. At that moment, Wan called for Jong Hao, who saw that Wei Nan had found a light for them. Though it wasn't perfect, it was the best auction at the time. Without power, the instruments weren't working, so they had to perform without them. The situation suddenly turned into a slice-of-life scene. As Yuha danced, the audience was impressed. Meanwhile, Jong Hao seemed to be singing, with Wei Nan watching him closely. A while later, the performance ended. Yuha's mother approached, asking if he was the one who had taken her daughter's phone. Awkwardly, he confirmed and apologized. Yuha turned to her mother, thanking her for coming, and her mother silently observed. She reached into her pocket for something but paused, then called for Yuha. After a while, Yuha's mother said she did well not to embarrass the family and that next time she could bring Jong Hao to their home. The two stood there, not quite sure how to respond. Yuha simply thanked her and ran to hug her mother. Jong Hao thought that all the effort over the past weeks was worth it for this moment. He felt that although the performance wasn't perfect, it was enough. He was feeling proud when someone pulled him by the shirt. It was Yuha, asking if he had time now. They went to the physical education room. He asked why she brought him there, considering they usually practice there. She said she wanted to bring him to that place because she wanted him to listen. She said she had been very happy since she met him. Every day during recess, she wanted to talk to him more, and every weekend, she wanted to go out with him. She even said she learned a lot from him. But because of his appearance, she felt she was losing control. She said that when she saw other girls talking to him, her heart ached and she had nightmares. She began to approach him, saying she thought it was some kind of illness, but then she took his hand and said she was certain about her feelings. She asked if they could be together. Now he was in trouble because everything she said was extremely serious. He considered her a good option because of her personality, but there was someone else on his mind and he couldn't deny his feelings. He thought to himself that this wasn't a very manly way to be decisive and he couldn't act like this. So he called out to Yuha, apologized, and said he couldn't accept her love. She was devastated for a second. He started to say that he already had someone else when she interrupted and hugged him. Confused, he asked what was going on. She said that even if he didn't like her, she would continue to like him, regardless of what he did. This didn't seem very healthy, but she said she would wait for him, and holding his face said she had been waiting, so nothing would change. With that, she helped him catch his breath, apparently for a long time. Near the window, Wei was there, noticing the situation and thinking instead of feeling jealous, wondering what was happening. Later, Jong Hao told himself that he needed to be more honest with his sister, Kin. He threw his clothes on the floor, complaining that no one was making things easier for him. Suddenly, Wei opened the door forcefully, greeting him. Startled, he asked how she could invade someone's privacy like that. She approached him, asking if Yuha had confessed. He replied that she probably heard everything. The president said she was satisfied with his response. Jong Hao asked what she meant by satisfied. The president explained that she had to take things out of her car to help him with that dance, so now he had to repay her. He told her to ask instead of doing these things and promised to help somehow. She said that in this world, good husbands always help their wives dress. Seeing what she was doing, he asked what kind of craziness this was. She informed him that he would have to help her put on her stockings again. He tried to pretend he didn't like it, but he was clearly flustered. He began to help, thinking it was an easy way not to betray his sister's trust and still calm this crazy woman. But the angel on his shoulder said it was clearly a betrayal. The devil, on the other hand, said it was his duty to help people. They started arguing, calling each other names. John Hao thought it wasn't very manly to owe people favors. He began helping and asked why we liked wearing those stockings so much. She said her social status required her to always look presentable and asked if he liked it. He continued helping, saying that even in his world, this would be considered a bit wrong. Suddenly, he stubbed his toe and she trembled a bit. This girl clearly wasn't right in the head either. She apologized while thinking about why she was acting this way. John Hao, on the other hand, noticed that she seemed different. She blushed, unsure of what to say. Then she asked about the incident at the hospital. He explained the situation with the bucket, saying it was accidental. However, Y-Man was already eager to punish the person responsible, and he told her to forget about it. He said she could finish dressing herself since he wasn't very confident with that part, but she seemed to notice something. She adjusted the rest and thanked him for his hard work. Outside, while waiting for Wei to finish dressing, she asked why he was still shy since she had already seen everything. Suddenly, her phone rang. It was a call from her secretary. When she answered, the person apologized but said it was urgent. The secretary informed her that they had found what they were looking for. White Man was startled, asking if it was true. She said she was going immediately. She waved goodbye to Zhang Hao, saying she would treat him to a meal later. However, he noticed that something had happened because she changed suddenly. A while later, Zhang Hao was back in bed, exhausted. But there was no peace in that house as Qin Qian came to check on him. She asked what was wrong, mentioning that he seemed very talented in dancing, referencing the performances with Y Nan that were recorded. She acknowledged it was a school event but admitted she felt uncomfortable. She hugged him, saying she didn't like how popular he was becoming. She asked if she wasn't enough for him, wondering if he needed other things. Zhang Hao thought to himself that making the woman he liked cry wasn't something a real man should do. However, the more she depended on him, the guiltier he felt. She kissed him intensely, while he thought that, in the end, he needed to tell her everything. After she had metaphorically sucked his blood, he asked what the problem was. She told him not to worry, saying it wouldn't happen again, but this time she wanted him to remember it clearly. Just then, a plate crashed to the floor. Zhang Hao's father entered, asking what was going on. Both of them suddenly became nervous. They tried to explain, but it was clearly difficult to get out of the situation. A while later, someone demanded they speak up. It was Qin Qian's mother, saying she wanted to know what was going on. Qin Qian tried to downplay it, saying they were just playing around. But her mother slammed the table, saying family doesn't play like that, asking if Qin Qian had forgotten she became Zhang Hao's sister when she moved in. Both stood with their heads down, unable to respond. The mother called their behavior disgraceful. Qin Qian remained silent, unsure of what to say. Zhang Hao's father suggested they might not need to take it so seriously, but the mother insisted that Qin Qian had always been peculiar and never spoke up when things happened. She regretted letting Qin Qian live with her loser of a father. At this, Qin Qian's expression changed and she said she would tell everything. But Zhang Hao interrupted, saying they were practicing for a vampire play coming up at school. He was going to be the lead actor and asked his sister for help. Their mother looked confused, asking what this was about. Qin Qian just watched quietly. Their mother, believing Zhang Hao to be an honest person, thought he probably wasn't lying and told them to be more careful in the future. Zhang Hao knew that if he hadn't stopped Qin Qian, she might have started a war at home. The problem wouldn't go away until he resolved everything. In the following days, Zhang Hao focused on his live streams and work. Using the memories of his past life, he excelled in school. With all the support he received from Y Nan, he became a top streamer. Everything was going well except for one thing. He began to remember the past when Qin Qian was pulling his arm. He recalled her promising him the stars and the sky, asking if he liked her too. And the current Qin Qian being startled, asking if he wasn't the real Zhang Hao. With that, he woke up. It was obviously a nightmare. He started to realize that the memories of the previous owner were becoming clearer. All of this started happening after he last saw the goddess of the Red Moon. He even went to a psychologist who ran some tests because he might have had a problem after that accident. However, his mind was found to be perfectly fine. In the middle of it all, he receives a video call from a red-haired girl who says it's something urgent. She is the operator of the platform where he streams and tells him they have a problem due to short videos. Because of this, they are launching an offline campaign and need someone who can attract a lot of fans. She explains that he is the only male god who could turn the situation around. Our guy already knows they're asking him to do something he doesn't want to do again. However, she assures him that he doesn't need to worry because it will be easy, and it's an offer he can't refuse. If he accepts, he would earn an 8-figure salary per year at these events. He gets excited and asks what activities will be involved in this event. The scene shifts to a beach. His friend informs him that it will be a reality show, similar to a Mr. Beast survive on a deserted island for 7 days video. And of course, Qin Qian is there as his assistant, so he won't be alone. Seeing this, our guy says the island doesn't seem so bad. Then someone calls him, it's Yuha. who found out about the event and obviously came to see him. But where there are two, there are three. Naturally, Wai Nan is also there, asking why everyone is watching the show she set up. As they start arguing again, John Hao stands there, unsure of what to do. The organizer calls everyone to a meeting to explain the rules. The group gathers around a table, and a blonde guy announces that he will be the host of the show. He explains that Miss Wai Nan will be a special guest. He goes on to say that participants will pair up and compete to see who is the strongest. The first round will have two events, volleyball and capture the flag. In the second round, everyone will be taken to survive for 5 days on a deserted island. Those with the best rankings in the first round will be able to select the best survival items. Some papers with the rules are handed out, but Wai Nan tears them in half, saying there's no need to worry about that since it will be easy. The blonde guy tries to explain that it would be better if she read them, but she just asks if he's really going against her word. Not wanting to offend her, he quickly says no. Of course, several streamers from the platform want to pair up with Miss Wei. John Hao thinks it's obvious since she's probably one of the organizers. Then someone calls out to him. It's 3 other girls from the platform who say they would make a great pair with him. He feels a bit awkward, unsure of how to respond. Meanwhile, a blue-haired guy comments that John Hao has nothing but a pretty face. He approaches John Hao, saying he looks like a beauty from 1,000 years ago, and points out that as a gamer, he earns much less than John Hao, who sells his face and body every day. Our guy decides to ignore him, simply saying that the blue-haired guy has a lot of fans too. But the guy continues, saying he heard John Hao ruin the career of one of his friends. John Hao wonders if this is another idiot seeking revenge. The guy then proposes a bet to John Hao, stating that the loser has to stop streaming for a month and put loser and subordinate of the other as the title of their live stream. The guy was confident, thinking for sure that Wai Nan would partner with him. At that moment, Wai Nan approached and called for her teammate. The fool, blushing, thought she meant him. However, Wai Nan grabbed John Hao, saying she would partner with him. John Hao asked why she got involved in the competition, to which she replied that she was there to help him. However, he said that he was a man who didn't need anyone's help to win, but she just called his name and mentioned that call she had received earlier. She said they found another person who, like him, came from another world. John Hao was shocked because he had no idea about this. Wai Nan explained that this person knows Yuha from another world and seems to have something special. But first, they would verify the authenticity of everything this person said. John Hao wondered what would happen if there really was another person like him. Then she caressed the boy, telling him not to worry since she was taking care of him. Suddenly, someone cleared their throat nearby. It was, of course, Kin saying that the sun was very hot and he needed sunscreen. So he left with his sister, telling Wai Nan to prepare for the competition. Wai Nan watched as Kin once again led him away. A while later, the blonde announced the start of the competition. The first event was volleyball, and naturally, John Ho's team would compete. Both teams were on the field, and he told them to get ready. Our guy was up against the blonde and the baldy. Wai Nan tossed the ball up and served with such power that the ball twisted. The poor guys on the other side didn't stand a chance. A few plays later, they were on the ground admitting defeat. The blue-haired guy from earlier, who had also made it to the final, commented that John Hao had been carried by his team. He approached asking if John Hao even knew what volleyball was and warned him that now he would learn the difference between them. With everyone on the field, the match began. The blue-haired guy threw the ball up and jumped about 30 meters to serve. John Hao was shocked, and Wai Nan realized it was almost professional-level skill. The ball came crashing down, and Wai Nan told John Hao not to try anything. However, the ball hit him square in the face. The announcer remarked that it seemed the blue team's strategy was to injure John Hao. Wai Nan asked if he was okay. The guy on the other side was laughing, saying accidents happen. Of course, Wai Nan told him to shut up, but he responded that he would show them what cruelty really was. The game continued with the scores staying close. Wai Nan tossed the ball up, and this was their chance to win. She aimed at the exhausted guy on the other side, who accidentally managed to block it with his arm. Both teams jumped to intercept. Suddenly, John Hao, channeling a scene from Haikyuu, told her to trust him. Instead of spiking, she gave the ball a light tap, and John Hao awkwardly jumped 30 meters. Though clumsy, he managed to hit the ball with his face, at least landing it on the ground, thus winning the round. A while later, everyone was attending to the worn-out John Hao. As usual, they were competing for his attention while he was unsure what to do. While they fussed over him, the blue-haired guy recorded the scene, stating he would embarrass John Hao. Later, while John Hao was walking around, everyone seemed to be talking about him. He sensed something was off and wondered what was going on. A girl beside him suggested he check the search results. The top result mentioned Anchor and John Hao winning 1-3. He wondered how this had happened and saw a photo from the previous day, realizing that someone from that place was sabotaging him. This would obviously damage his online image. The blue-haired guy approached, saying it looked like a paparazzi had caught him and that people like that should be jailed. Then Wai Nan bumped into him. She got a list of everyone who had arrived on the island and warned that whoever it was, she would make them disappear once she found out. The blue-haired guy trembled. John Hao thanked her, but said it was trivial and reminded her that it was a public place, so she couldn't threaten people like that. She blushed, saying he was being too presumptuous. Meanwhile, the others wondered why Wei Nan was acting that way. Then Qin Qin and Wei entered the room. Zhang Hao turned to ask what they wanted. Qin Qin ran to him asking if he was okay and saying she would handle it. She said she already had a good idea of who it was and would investigate it by tonight. The guy seemed scared, wondering why his sister was there. Then Wei Hao mentioned calling her grandmother to bring in some people from the military. Zhang Hao, alarmed, said it was an exaggeration and unnecessary. He thanked them for the support but thought he couldn't rely on them like this. He already knew who the troublemaker was and just wanted to let him dig his own grave a bit more. And so the second day of the event arrived. Reporters were all eager to interview Zhang Hao, obviously wanting his opinion on the leaked photos. He decided to explain and said it wasn't as complicated as everyone thought. He clarified that two of the people in the photos were Yuha and his sister, who were there as his assistant and camera woman respectively. The other person in the photo was Wei Nan, who was also participating. He explained that they were discussing the day's game and showed his phone, explaining that their faces were hidden because the intent behind the photos was clear. However, he had no hesitation in clarifying the situation and said he believed the only way to combat these rumors was by being honest. Beside him, Wei Nan remarked that he was really boosting the show's popularity. Qin Qin appeared, saying that Wei Nan should pay more attention to the situations she put him in. However, Wei Nan simply said that lately he could lie without even blushing and asked Qin Qin if she didn't think he had changed a lot recently. In the bathroom, the guy who took the photos knew he was in trouble. His plan was to deny everything and hope they couldn't pin it on him. Just then, Qin Qin appeared and said she knew it was him. He turned startled and asked what she was talking about. She told him to confess, saying she had proof. He claimed ignorance, but she informed him that she had hacked his phone, restored the backup of the photos he took, and found other things from his past. He panicked and asked what he needed to do to keep her from leaking it all. She simply approached and told him to disappear. Grabbing him by the collar, she said he was lucky she wanted to grow old by Zhang Hao's side. Then she threw him to the ground, leaving him crying like an idiot. She turned with a smile and told him to take care of his own life, leaving him there snotty and abandoned. Outside, she met Yuha and told her everything inside had been resolved. She said that if Yuha had any questions, she could ask her. Later, during the capture the flag competition, a guy ran out as soon as it started. Zhang Hao, surprised, told Wei Nan to be careful. But the guy slid on his knees to Zhang Hao, grabbed his foot, and said he was quitting the competition, praising him. Zhang Hao was confused and asked if the guy had some other trick up his sleeve. But the guy just begged Zhang Hao to forget everything that happened. The organizer tried to explain that the event had already started and asked what the guy was doing. The guy then revealed to everyone that he was the one who took and posted the photos of Zhang Hao. Wei Nan simply watched and the guy cried, saying he just wanted to go home. In the end, his team quit and Zhang Hao's group advanced. But Zhang Hao knew the guy must have been threatened somehow to quit like that. When Zhang Hao opened the door to his room, he saw something unexpected. His sister was there, waiting for him as usual. He asked why she was there, and she immediately hugged him, saying she came to this place to take care of him. Embarrassed, he said he understood and asked what she wanted to do. She was silent for a moment, remembering when Wei Nan had said he seemed different. She laughed, thinking that apparently Wei Nan was losing to his sister. Yuha, who was nearby, said that no matter how much he changed, she still wanted him. But Wei Nan told her to shut up. Qin Qin thought to herself that even if he changed, she still liked him and that no one was better for him than her. She then said she wanted to confess their relationship to their relatives. Zhang Hao hesitated, wondering why she was bringing this up now. He approached and hugged her, saying it was a promise then. It was the last day of the competition, where they had to carry supplies across the island. In that place, finding food, water, and shelter would be the biggest challenge. In the jungle were Zhang Hao and Wei Nan, who seemed ready to take on a wild adventure. Zhang Hao couldn't stop thinking about how strong she was. She looked back and asked if he was scared or what was going on. He said it was nothing, and they could start right away. With that, she entered the forest, telling him to stay close. She grabbed some mint leaves and said they would be essential for surviving mosquitoes. Zhang Hao was impressed, remarking that she really was a soldier before. She handed him some and told him not to worry, as with her around, this challenge would be easy. All they needed to do was reach a nearby lake. When they arrived, she said she would try to catch a fish and told him to gather some berries. However, she reminded him to use the walkie-talkie or signaler if he encountered danger. Zhang Hao assured her that there was no need to worry, and everything was fine. She told him to hurry and come back to eat the fish. As Zhang Hao wandered, he thought that after this event they needed to distance themselves. A while later, he returned and called for her. He explained that he didn't know which berries were edible, so he brought them all. She praised him and said she had also found something useful. But then her expression changed and she told him not to move. He was confused, unaware that there was a snake near his hand. Unfortunately, he ended up touching it. The snake turned towards him, ready to strike. Wei Nan immediately jumped in to protect him. Taking the bite herself, she quickly pulled the snake off and threw it away. Zhang Hao asked if she was okay. Her knee was bleeding and she had been bitten on the arm. Zhang Hao thought she was in serious danger and knew she needed treatment. He pushed her down and told her not to move. A production crew member informed the organizer that it was a non-venomous snake, so there was no serious concern. The organizer suggested sending support but not to arrive too quickly. As the bite was on her shoulder, Jang Hao saw no issue with helping to remove the venom. However, Wai Nan was confused by his actions. It was too late though because the boy was a professional lifeguard. She wanted to tell him that wasn't the proper treatment for a snake bite, and the event crew even had to cut the live stream temporarily. Nearby, Qin Qin was observing everything, clearly not happy. Jang Hao spat out the blood he had sucked, determined to find some bandages. However, Wai Nan, out of breath, told him to wait and asked where he had heard that this was the way to treat a snake bite. She explained that if it had been truly venomous, he shouldn't have tried to suck it out as he could get infected. She clarified that the snake wasn't venomous, so all they needed was some clean water. A doctor was being sent over, and the organizer reminded her not to interfere with the game. Then someone called out saying they would come too. It was of course Qin Qin. Being well known in the medical field, people recognized her. She announced that as Zhang Ho's sister and a doctor, she wanted to check on him. The other doctor said it would be an honor to have such an incredible doctor as her. As night fell, the two were in a cave. Zhang Hao mentioned that he was starting to feel awkward with how much she was staring at him. The camera was on the ground and he asked if it was okay, as they were supposed to be filmed. She simply said that she was the boss, so it wasn't a problem, and explained that what was about to happen couldn't be broadcast on TV. She began to approach Zhang Hao, who asked why she was acting like this all of a sudden. Seeing her expression, he joked that it seemed the snake had some other kind of venom. However, she was 10 times stronger than him and threw him to the ground. Unfortunately, there was nothing he could do. She was too strong for him. She then commented that her clothes were a mess because of the wound, but mentioned it might be very convenient. Outside, someone said they should be close. It was a group of doctors, one of whom commented that they had lost the walkie-talkie signal. Qin Qin started to get worried. Then she heard some noises beside her. When she looked, she asked who it was. It was, of course, Yuha. This guy couldn't go a second without having all three around him. When the doctors looked back, Qin Qin had disappeared. Qin Qin then asked Yuha how she was in the jungle. Yuha said she had been following them. Qin Qin told Yuha that even though she liked Zhang Hao, it was impossible for them to be together. Yuha simply said she knew that. However, all she wanted was to stay by Zhang Hao's side and make him happy. And of course, if she found anyone who made him unhappy, she'd explode that person's head. Qin Qin just observed quietly. Meanwhile, somewhere else, someone was telling a certain person to stop. Our boy had been immobilized, and the president warned him that this time he couldn't escape. He said he didn't want anything, but she replied that his body was more honest. Just then, they heard someone shouting his name. He immediately recognized the voices of his sister and Yueha and told Yuan to get everything in order. The president was furious, once again annoyed that the others had ruined her fun. A little later, the two of them entered the cave. Zhang Hao immediately asked his sister why she had followed them. He was making excuses when she noticed some marks on his neck. Furious, she immediately called out Yuan, who told them they shouldn't be there since it was a competition area. However, Qin Qin lunged to punch Yuan, who easily defended herself and asked if she really wanted to go down this path. She then landed a solid punch on Qin Qin's stomach. Zhang Hao was shocked as they started to fight seriously. The president approached and asked Qin Qin who she thought she was to try to teach her a lesson. But then they heard something. Yuan was also coming in to try and punch the president. Yuan easily blocked it, but Yuan didn't stop, saying that anyone who hurt Zhang Hao was her enemy. She managed to land another kick, declaring she would fight anyone who caused him trouble. This time, Yuan was pushed back, and like a joker, she started laughing, her expression soon changing. Qin Qin got up, saying she didn't think the president of the Hongfeng group would be so shameless. Yuba told her to shut up, but Qin Qin retorted that she was just an old woman trying to get with younger people. Enraged, Yuan approached, saying she would make Qin Qin shut up, and slapped her across the face. Zhang Hao couldn't believe what was happening. He stepped forward and apologized for his sister, asking Yuan to control herself because no one there could match her. She only replied that his sister did everything to satisfy her desires with him. From the ground, Qin Qin told Hao that he didn't need to apologize. Slowly getting up, she said it was all Yuan's fault. Zhang Hao noticed that his sister's mouth was bleeding and was alarmed. But Qin Qin declared that woman would never touch Zhang Hao again. Yuan, feeling provoked, said it seemed Qin Qin wanted to die. But just then, Zhang Hao told her not to do anything because he was already Qin Qin's boyfriend. The two women were shocked, and Qin Qin, of course, gave a little smile. He explained that this event was just a farewell and that he would never speak to Yuan again after this. He added that they were never compatible, and now that he was with Qin Qin, it was all over. The scene shifts to the doctors walking through the forest. They discuss among themselves why Qin Qin seems to be acting alone, but the blue-haired guy notes that from the tracks on the ground, she isn't alone. They see a fire in the cave ahead and assume that's where the group is. Back with Zhang Hao, he told Yuan once more that he wanted her to stop interfering in his life, but Yuan just told him to shut up. She didn't care about the spells Qin Qin had used on him. After dealing with Qin Qin, they would talk. Zhang Hao tried to reason with her, saying this did make sense. Qin Qin admitted that Yuan was strong, but insisted she wouldn't give up on Zhang Hao. Just then, they heard a sound behind them. When they looked, they saw two doctors hiding behind a pillar. Embarrassed, one of them awkwardly commented that they seemed to have arrived at a good time. Outside, she said that if Yuan was okay, they could take her back to the starting point of the island. But the president warned them not to talk about anything they had seen there. The doctor agreed, saying she wouldn't tell anyone about it. But at that moment, her expression changed. An arrow struck the back of the doctor, passing through and startling Wei. Someone was approaching from the side, and she had no idea who it was. The person nearly slashed at her, but she dodged just in time. It was the blue-haired guy from earlier. John Hao came in with a kick, telling Wei to back off, and he sent the guy flying. At that moment, she sensed another arrow coming and threw herself to pull John Hao aside. He was in shock, realizing he had almost died. From the shadows, someone emerged, saying that Miss Wei had grown rusty. It was a woman in camouflage clothing with a tattoo on her waist. Wei asked why they were alive, and John Hao wanted to know if she knew them. She confirmed, saying they were a group of extremist terrorists and that the snake tattoo represented the Ouroboros organization. She mentioned having had fun with them once before. The woman replied that that wasn't the case, and that because of their past, they would have to fight to the death. She explained that they had been waiting for the perfect opportunity, and this event in the forest was just what they needed. Of course, they weren't going to miss this chance. Qin shouted, telling them to wait, and announced that she was surrendering. She said that if their issue was with Wei, the rest should be let go, and she promised never to speak of this incident, even offering the large sum of money. The woman acknowledged Qin's intelligence in trying to remove herself from the situation, but said they were professionals and couldn't leave any witnesses behind. Wei told them there was no negotiating with these people and said that when the fighting started, she would protect them and they should try to escape. However, John Hao thought that escaping wouldn't be easy. They had 4 people, but the attackers were well armed and might have others hidden. With that, the order was given to advance. Everyone rushed towards Wei and Qin threw herself at John Hao, telling him to follow her. However, the blue-haired guy came up behind Qin, asking where she thought she was going. John Hao jumped in front to protect her, punching the guy's hand before he could slash. Qin wondered how he had such skills, and John Hao told everyone to stop fighting and flee with him. The woman seemed impressed. Meanwhile, the organizers were relaxing with drinks, talking about the man getting promoted to director if everything went well. Unfortunately, the group was still surrounded. As they were about to enter the cave, Wei questioned if John Hao thought this was a good plan. He said he wasn't sure, but it was better than guaranteed death outside. The woman told her team to finish them off as they were done for. Wei turned and told them to go in first, warning that it would be dangerous if everyone turned their backs. John Hao hesitated for a moment, but she urged him to stop wasting time and get inside. One of the attackers lunged at her, and Wei went to face them, telling the others to flee. Inside the cave, John Hao found the supplies they had missed earlier. He found the passage that was part of his plan and thought it was a good idea. He turned to the 2 women and told them to go ahead while he went to rescue Wei. His sister insisted it was too dangerous, but he replied that even if Wei was a difficult person, he couldn't abandon her. He started heading toward her, telling his sister to flee. She just watched in silence, feeling a strange emotion she couldn't quite understand. Outside, Wei was taking down the first attacker, warning that anyone who continued would die. The woman realized that none of her plans were working. The entrance to the cave was so narrow that they had to face Wei one at a time. Wei declared that their fight would be endless and stepped in, saying she would bring an end to their organization. The woman had no choice at that moment and shot an arrow without knowing what else to do. They entered the cave, but no one knew what happened. She told the woman beside her to watch the exit while she called for reinforcements. Running through the cave, John Hao just hoped Wei was okay. But when he arrived, he saw something unexpected. Poor Wei had been hit with an arrow in her arm and wasn't doing well at all. He approached, asking what had happened, and she wanted to know why he came back. He simply said there was a passageway and he was going to take her now. However, she told him to flee because they could still be caught. Ignoring her, he picked her up, saying he was getting her out of there. She blushed, questioning why he came back if he wanted to end contact with her. He shouted that was nonsense and told her to forget it, saying he was going to take her alive out of that place. For the first time, Wei felt the sensation of being protected. On the other side of the cave, Qin and Yue were anxious because they weren't returning. When they finally approached, Qin called out his name. John Hao said he was back, but Wei wasn't in good shape. Yue looked happy, but Qin seemed somewhat desolate. He turned to Qin, asking her to check Wei's wounds. Hesitant, she diagnosed that it was bleeding a lot but wasn't fatal. Qin tore off a piece of her shirt, and Wei asked why she was saving her like this. Qin replied that John Hao had worked so hard and she didn't want to waste that effort. She said that since they weren't out of danger yet, once she finished the bandages, she would get John Hao out of there. Wei agreed that was the best option since she was the target of those people. She mentioned the Red Moon research and told John Hao to talk to Secretary Jin. Qin noticed something but said nothing. John Hao insisted it wasn't time to talk about that and that they needed to escape. But Qin shouted his name, asking why he was willing to die for Wei. She told him he should go back home and return to their life together. John Hao simply replied that maybe he wouldn't be able to return. Wei Nan had saved him, and as a real man, he couldn't leave her alone. Thought to herself how amazing he was. He mentioned that he learned this from Brother Long clearly from his other life. He told Qin Qin to return, saying that Yuho wanted to save Wei Nan. But Qin Qin didn't want to give up, saying he shouldn't leave the two of them alone. John Hao apologized, saying he wasn't the John Hao she knew, and if he had the chance in the future, he would explain everything. He asked his sister to be obedient and leave with Yuha. Qin Qin seemed to insist, saying she wanted to protect him, but Yuha said she wanted to be as masculine as he was, or maybe a masculine woman. She wasn't sure what to say. John Hao thanked them for their kindness, but warned that everyone would die if they didn't escape soon. He told them to stop and flee. Qin Qin said she could go back alone, but life didn't make sense without him, so she didn't want to leave him there. She wanted to stay with him. At that moment, someone asked what kind of romantic drama was unfolding. It was the woman from earlier, who asked if they were tired of the cat and mouse game. John Hao realized this time they had brought many more people. The production team was waking up after drinking a lot and began wondering what all the noise outside was about. Looking at the sky, they were shocked to see a lot of helicopters approaching the forest. In the middle of it all, John Hao was lying on the ground, everyone having been immobilized. The moon was red, and the woman questioned why everyone liked that boy. She began to draw her weapon, saying that if they had more time, she would try something else. But just as she was about to end the boy's life, the blade stopped a second before. She turned and commented on how wonderful Wei Nan's expression was at that moment. She said it was ridiculous that such a cautious woman was in this situation because of that boy. Poor John Ho was unconscious on the ground, unable to do anything. Wei Nan began to cry, saying that if the moon hated letting him escape, she would do anything it wanted. The woman laughed, asking if she really would do anything. She mentioned the brother Wei Nan hadn't let leave alive and declared that this time, no one would escape. And then the ketchup was spilled. At that moment, John Hao fell lifeless to the ground. But something appeared in front of him. He saw red hair and asked why she was there. It was the goddess of the red moon just watching him die. She laughed and asked who he was. Suddenly, he woke up in shock. He got up from the bed, wondering if he was dead. But then someone beside him called him husband. The woman asked if he was having nightmares. Sweating, he didn't understand who was being addressed. It was Wei Man wearing an oxygen. The scene shifted to the middle of the city. John Hao had really returned to his own world. It was the place where he used to work, and beside him was Wei Nan, who had always been the CEO of his company. He was sure this was the work of the goddess of the red moon. Wei Nan asked what he was thinking about so much and questioned if he had thought about the proposal of bringing his father to live with them. She mentioned that it would be hard for his father to raise a child alone and that their house was very big, especially since when their child was born, they would need help. He quickly noticed her hand on her belly and felt confused. Apparently, he was going to be a father. She then pulled him by the tie and reminded him that when they were alone, he should call her wife. He hesitated, and she asked why he was acting so strangely. John Hao thought to himself that she was still identical to the Wei Nan from the other world. So he called her wife, and she thanked him. They arrived, and she said she was going to work, but told him to send a message. John Ho didn't expect to return to his world in this way. If he ended up there because he died, what happened to Qin Qin and Wei Yuan? He wondered if, in the end, he hadn't been able to save anyone. But then he asked himself the most important question. What were Qin Qin and Wei Yuan doing in this world? He knew that in the past life, Qin Qin was a famous doctor. He searched for her name on the internet but found nothing. This made him question if her entire life changed because she didn't meet John Hao. He then decided to search for Wei Yuan. Strangely, instead of a military family, it now seemed like an entrepreneurial group. This made him realize that he no longer had any connection with either of them. And worst of all, he had no idea how they were living. The most inexplicable thing was that he returned to this world and became Wei Yuan's husband without any explanation. He then wondered how he had managed to seduce the CEO. After that, he left the office and wandered aimlessly. The world seemed familiar, but it was very strange at the same time. He went to where his house was in the past life. He didn't know how his father was living. And then Wei Yuan appeared and asked why he had returned before the end of the workday. She approached, saying she was planning a surprise, but he had already arrived. She asked if he remembered that today was his birthday, and that she had planned a party with his father. John Hao seemed confused and asked if it was really his birthday. Wei Yuan just stared at him and asked if he was having some problem. He just said he wasn't used to her being so kind. John Hao found it strange that he had no relationship with her and now had to live as if they were husband and wife. So he asked how a woman as ambitious as her ended up with a common guy like him. She said he was acting very strangely and didn't seem like the guy she knew. She put her arm around his shoulder and said that if he was anxious about the marriage, she would take care of him. She gave him a kiss and told him not to worry. Then she said they would discuss this more later and asked if they could go to the party. Obviously, John Ho was just observing everything. His father was there normally in front of him. He asked his father if Wei Nan was really going to spend the day with them at the house. His father said yes, and John Hao said he only had 2 beds, so he would have to sleep with his father. But his father just told him to learn to resolve couple issues together with her, saying that he should always speak the truth to his wife. John Hao tried to protest, saying that his father didn't understand anything. However, his father just got up and said he was going to rest. He closed the bedroom door and wished him a happy birthday. There was silence, except for Wai Nan in the kitchen. With nothing else to do, he approached her, saying he would help. She then mentioned that last Manga had been great, so why didn't he want to continue today? Embarrassed, he realized she had overheard the conversation with his father. She asked if she was pushing him so hard that his body couldn't keep up. At that moment, he felt dejected, not realizing things had gotten to that level. He just observed her, wondering if he had really experienced all this before. The problem was that he had no memory of these events. Ignoring all that, he decided to ask her a question. He wanted to know how their first date went. She explained that it was during a company event when a guy tried to put drugs in her drink. Being an important person involved with the company, she was hesitant to refuse and potentially ruin business relations. Then Zhang Hao stepped in, grabbed the guy's arm, and pretended to be her husband, saying he would drink it instead. She never imagined he would be brave enough to pretend to be her husband and drink it. A second later, he fell to the ground like an idiot, foaming at the mouth, and told her that it was very dangerous. She turned to confront the guy, who accidentally admitted it was just supposed to be an aphrodisiac. With that, everyone at the company found out about the guy's plans. He was taken away by the police, and the two of them stayed behind. She asked if Zhang Hao was okay, and he explained that he had lost all his strength and collapsed. She then asked how he knew something was wrong with the drink. He said he had been watching the guy and saw him put something strange in the glass. Knowing the guy's reputation, he was afraid he might do something to her. She then asked why he went to such extremes for her. Was he in love with her? Zhang Hao replied that he wasn't. He just found it amazing that a woman like her had reached such an important position. Since his desk was near hers, he often saw how hard she worked. He was afraid that if this incident happened, people would think she got her position because of her looks. She said he seemed very concerned about her. Embarrassed, he said he just wanted to do the right thing. She said it seemed he was her hero of justice. He felt shy and asked why she was using those expressions. She laughed and asked if there was someone he liked. After that day, they started talking and gradually got closer. Suddenly, Zhang Hao hugged her. As he leaned in, she asked what was wrong. He thought to himself that he could tell all this was true and felt good about it. He realized that having Wai Man in this world was amazing. However, he then called her name and asked if she believed in parallel worlds. She was taken aback for a moment and asked why he was talking about that. He explained that she might not believe it, but he had a dream so long it felt like he was in another world. In that place, she also existed, but their relationship was more like friends. What connected them was his biggest secret, but there were also two other people who were important to him. Because of him, these people went through various dangers and might have even lost their lives. He failed to help them and couldn't tell the truth, leaving him confused. She suddenly turned, grabbed his face, and said it was okay for him to tell her because she was the person he should trust. But she didn't worry about other worlds because she wanted to live the rest of her life with him in this one. However, she said she didn't want him to live with regrets because that would make him happy. If he needed time to resolve those issues, she wouldn't mind. At that moment, he noticed a red light around her, but she leaned in and said this was the first time he had shown interest in others. Then, she attacked him before he could respond. At that moment, he seems to remember something. She tells him that he must understand that no matter what world he's in, she will always find him. He starts to question what is happening and why he feels the presence of the red moon. Suddenly, he feels something strange and disappears in front of Wai Nan. She comments on how quickly it happened, but now it's her turn. A voice asks if this is her choice. Approaching Wai Nan, it remarks that it believes she was the most possessive of them all. It touches her shoulder and says she should have chosen to stay there with him forever, but now she'll have to compete again. Wai Nan replies that if he returns, she believes he will make the same choice as she did. Furthermore, even if she has to compete, she will give her best. The goddess says she likes this attitude. She warns that it's a rare trip to come to this world, but they will never see each other again. With that, she disappears. Wai Nan thinks to herself that it might have been nice to stay there, and then she too begins to vanish. I don't know what's going on, but everyone is disappearing and reappearing. Once again, our protagonist wakes up in another place. He asks his wife why they can't leave. That's when someone covers his mouth. This time it's Yuva, who says the pervert is dead. He's confused, wanting to know where Wei has gone. However, Yuva just tells him not to move and to be honest. He asks why his classmate is on top of him. A while later, observing Yuha on her phone, he realizes it's another trick of the blood moon. This timeline is many years after the previous one. He knows everything is extremely chaotic, but he must stay calm. Clearly, he is being teleported between lives he could lead only to be sent back to despair. At this moment, Yuha extends her hand, apologizes, and says she accidentally restrained him. He says it's fine, noticing that now she's a police officer. However, it seems that in this world, she doesn't know him. She tells him to hop on the bike because they're going to the station. Our protagonist thinks she looks older and cooler. At the police station, she apologizes to the captain, saying she caused problems for their department. He scolds her, reminding her that their job is to serve the public. However, she's always anxious and disrupting operations, so she needs to learn to stay calm. She continues apologizing, promising it won't happen again. In the office, everyone comments that it seems she only got that position through connections. Zhang Hao thinks that just like in her previous life, she's living in an isolated environment. He turns to the guard and says he never felt threatened. In fact, it was good to know she was trying to protect him. He feels much safer knowing she's an officer who doesn't let criminals escape. He then asks her if she agrees. Before she can respond, he raises her arm and declares the case resolved. She doesn't quite understand what he's doing. The scene shifts to another location. They're sitting in a building, analyzing some newspapers. It seems he's helping her find a criminal who takes photos of women. She says this person must be around 25 years old and stays near the district where he was passing through. When she saw him freeze when she called out, she suspected it might be him and apologizes for throwing him to the ground. He says he's already told her he doesn't mind at all. When he pats her on the head, she asks what he's doing. He changes the subject, saying her methods for fighting crime are really clever. However, he starts giving some tips, suggesting she should disguise herself before watching that area. He also suggests they should use some method to lure the person instead of just waiting for someone to pass by. Another thing they could do is visit websites where this person might be sharing these photos. He quickly covers her eyes, saying that's something a child shouldn't see. They soon find a person who assures them that all the photos are taken without anyone knowing. Jong Hao then turns to Yuha and says it's time for the final step. They just needed a trap. The next afternoon at the train station, Jong Hao expressed his discomfort with using someone else's bait. That's why he donned a woman's cosplay, feeling embarrassed about walking around like that. But he told himself that being a real man, this was just a piece of fabric to help a friend. Then Yua came over, grabbing him and telling her friend to come along. Jong Hao wondered why it felt like she was testing him and missed the old calm and obedient Yuha. The problem was that everyone on the train was staring in shock. Yua was glaring at everyone around, and Jong Hao knew this wouldn't work if she wasn't discreet. They'd been on the train for a while, and it was strange that no one had tried anything. He saw a school kid talking about playing a game and figured it wasn't them, a guy complaining about the stock market, clearly preoccupied with other matters, and a calm old man who didn't seem suspicious. Frustrated, Jong Hao wondered why no one had taken the bait. Yua tried to reassure him, saying they could try again if needed. Suddenly, the entire train car jolted. Yua stumbled and fell into Jong Hao's arms, wrapping herself in a pile of fabric. He told her to stay still and be careful, but the men nearby, seeing the situation, were instantly smitten. Yua, still acting odd, commented that he was impressive even as a woman, leaving Jong Hao confused. As people began commenting on the minor accident, Jong Hao felt someone touch him. Realizing there was a person behind him, he noticed a partially open suitcase underneath, suspecting there was a camera inside. He stepped on the person's foot, who yelped about his expensive shoes. Jong Hao turned and accused him of being overdressed for a pervert with a hidden camera. The man, realizing Jong Hao's voice was male, questioned the absurdity of the setup. Jong Hao demanded he open the suitcase, sure there was something incriminating inside. The man tried to leave, claiming they were crazy and attempting to walk away. But Yuta grabbed him by the shoulder, threw him to the ground, and identified herself as the police. The man, stunned, was told he was under arrest. Jong Hao hoped this would at least work out. The scene shifted back to the police station. In the end, Jong Hao successfully helped her, and their work was acknowledged by the department. Later, they were at a shopping mall, where Jong Hao was frustrated that pictures of him dressed as a woman were spreading online. Yuva joked it was his fault for not being ugly and thanked him again, saying that as expected, she couldn't do anything without his help. Jong Hao tried to reassure her, saying she was smart and just needed to work on her social skills. But Yuya insisted that wasn't what she meant. She clarified that she couldn't do anything without him, moving closer to him to explain further. Jong Hao grabbed her cheek, asking if she was drunk. She denied it, and he told her to stop saying such things. She started crying, saying it was hard for her to suffer alone. She joined the police academy thinking she would like it if everyone kept their distance because they knew her grandmother's position. This caused problems with her family, who began pressuring her to find a partner and setting up blind dates. But she always refused because they weren't like him. Jong Hao was confused, not understanding what she was talking about, especially since they theoretically hadn't known each other long. Suddenly, she collapsed into his arms, her face turning pale. It seemed she was sick, and the protagonist apologized, saying he would make up to her. He carried her, saying he knew the perfect place. They headed to the beach, where Jong Hao remarked that it was the perfect place for her to sober up a bit. However, Yua complained that she didn't enjoy being carried. She mentioned that her feet hurt, prompting him to massage them. She complimented his skills, and he mentioned that he learned it all while working on his parents' farm. Suddenly, she called his name but remained silent. She thanked him, and he asked if she needed anything else. Yua stood up, stating she understood now. As the red moon shone above, she said she couldn't selfishly keep him there. Confused, Jong Hao asked what she was talking about. She referred to him as classmate Jong Hao, telling him he had somewhere else to be. He was at a loss for words, realizing she knew they were in the same class, something she shouldn't have known. It dawned on him that the red moon was at play again, and then he vanished. Yua reached into her pocket, pulled out the pendant he had given her, and said she would miss him. The goddess appeared, commenting that the girl from the Lin family seemed very fragile and not too smart in her decision. She warned that Yua would have to compete with the other two without any real advantage, especially considering that it wasn't guaranteed Jong Hao would return. Yuya insisted that as long as the goddess kept her promise, they would prevail. Meanwhile, Wei Nan stood beside a body in a hospital. She saw Yuva stand up and congratulated her on her success. She then turned to Qin Qin, saying it was now her turn, but asked her to understand that it was his life they were dealing with. Qin Qin hesitated for a moment, but then affirmed that she knew what she had to do. Zhang Hao felt like he was falling into an abyss and wondered what was happening again. He was puzzled as to why he had first gone to Wei Nan's world and then to Yuha's. The strangest part was that both seemed to know something, almost as if they were certain he was leaving. He questioned if they had also traveled through time. Considering the events, it seemed there was an agreement among the three and the goddess. The lingering question was what the purpose of all this was. Suddenly, he was blinded by a flash of light. He looked down at his hands and realized he had time traveled again. But now he didn't seem much older. In fact, he was back in primary school. He worried that changes in the past might affect everything that happened in the future. Lost in thought, he was hit by a ball, falling to the ground with a bloody nose. Later, he woke up to someone peeling an apple beside him. He looked up to see a much younger Qin Qin, who asked if he was awake. Confused, he asked if she was his sister, Qin Qin. She remained silent for a moment, then said she had been waiting for him for a long time and had a question. Zhang Hao was startled by her tone, recognizing it as his sister's. She asked if he was the real Zhang Hao. The protagonist hesitated for a moment, realizing she seemed to know the truth. He then confessed that he wasn't the old Zhang Hao she knew, explaining it was just a coincidence that he ended up in this body. He told her he was an ordinary man from another world who woke up in this body with some of the old Zhang Hao's memories but no idea how he got there. He admitted the only thing he was certain of was that he liked Qin Qin. Crying, she asked if the real Zhang Hao would ever return. The protagonist said he had no idea. The apple fell to the ground as she spoke of losing the meaning in her life. Seeing her holding a knife, Zhang Hao rushed toward her as she said that since he had disappeared from this life, everything was pointless. He grabbed the blade, telling her not to say such foolish things. He insisted that everything that had happened was his fault, so it was his responsibility to make things right. Since he had taken over Zhang Hao's body, it should be him who dies, perhaps allowing the real Zhang Hao to return. But Qin Qin said he knew that this wasn't the world where the other Zhang Hao existed. However, Zhang Hao insists that they can't know for sure unless they try. Maybe if he disappeared, this dream would end. But Qin Qin says she can't do it, even if he isn't the real Zhang Hao. She trembles as he asks what's wrong. Meanwhile, outside, the teachers are discussing Zhang Hao's well-being. One of them reassures the other that being young, he should recover well from the trauma. They decide to check on him, but when they open the door, they're shocked by what they see. They quickly intervene, asking what is happening. The teacher rushes over, grabbing Qin Qin's wrist, asking if she intended to hurt her classmate. Zhang Hao tries to explain the situation, but the teacher doesn't let him speak, insisting that he leaves immediately. As Zhang Hao is led away, he tries to defend Qin Qin, saying she didn't do anything wrong. However, the teacher is already on the phone reporting that a girl named Qin Qin appeared to have attempted to harm a classmate. Time passes and we see a man, apparently Qin Qin's stepfather, apologizing for her behavior and explaining that she's having some mental health issues. He presents a gift to the teachers, hoping they will understand. The teacher suggests he returns home as they'll need time to resolve the situation. At home, Qin Qin's stepfather praises her for being well-behaved but holds a belt, questioning why she's causing trouble at school. Her mother tries to intervene, but he, seemingly skilled in Muay Thai, intimidates her. He declares it's pointless to try to teach Qin Qin anything. Qin Qin warns him not to touch her mother. Her stepfather reminds her that he's the one supporting the household, calling them parasites. He then threatens her mother with a belt, but Qin Qin, in a sudden outburst, hits him on the head. He falls, shocked, asking if she's crazy, while Qin Qin prepares to strike again. Her mother screams for her to stop as Qin Qin holds a pencil close to his eye, warning him to ask for a divorce. He apologizes, saying he understands, but suddenly grabs her arm and throws her against the wall. Qin Qin, petite and light, crashes against the wall. The stepfather remarks that he always knew there was something wrong with her and starts kicking her, saying he's going to teach her a lesson. Outside, Zhang Hao searches for an address, remembering that Qin Qin's house should be around there. Later, we see Qin Qin on the floor, battered but conscious, contemplating the futility of everything. She believes she's a complete failure, unloved and unnoticed, with a dysfunctional family. She thinks maybe she never deserved to be loved and considers ending it all. Just as she contemplates her dark thoughts, Zhang Hao appears at the window, asking if she's okay. Startled, she questions why he's there and how he managed to climb up to the 6th floor. He tells her to forget about that, as window cleaners nearby wonder where the safety ropes have gone. Zhang Hao then asks if she's had trouble with her stepfather, mentioning he heard yelling. She tells him to mind his own business, saying if he's not the real Zhang Hao, he should stop saying useless things. However, Zhang Hao insists that he can't ignore it, stating that a real man always does what's right. Later, Qin Qin steps out of her room, seeing her stepfather with a swollen forehead. From a distance, she watches them. The man sarcastically comments on her impressive ability to pick the lock. He then extinguishes his cigarette, saying she needs to be disciplined again, and moves in to strike her with the belt. However, a hand interrupts. It's Zhang Hao apologizing for the sudden visit. The man recognizes him as the kid from the incident and asks what he's doing there. Zhang Hao says he heard that his friend would be away from school for a while, so he came to visit. He didn't expect to find such an animated house. The stepfather claims that nothing is happening and questions how a kid like Zhang Hao has this kind of strength. The stepfather assumes Zhang Hao wants some form of compensation and asks what he wants. Zhang Hao simply asks that the man leave Qin Qin and her mother alone. If he doesn't, everything he's done in that house will be reported to the police. The man starts laughing, questioning if Zhang Hao came to play the justice messenger. He doubts anyone would believe the words of a child who hasn't seen anything and argues that those with economic status control everything, so there's nothing Zhang Hao can do. Despite Qin Qin's dissatisfaction, her mother enjoys a more comfortable life now. Zhang Hao retorts that the man is pitiful and points to a clock, revealing that everything has been recorded. With Qin Qin's bruises as evidence, everyone will believe him. He then punches the man, incapacitating him. They quickly escape outside. Qin Qin, confused, asks Zhang Hao why he's doing all this for her in this alternate world. He replies that even if the world is false, the suffering is real. Just as she didn't need a reason to be good to the real Zhang Hao, he doesn't need a reason either. She thanks him but says that betraying Zhang Hao would be like betraying herself for over 10 years, apologizing that her life no longer has meaning. Zhang Hao grabs her arm, insisting that she live for herself and that she isn't a burden or responsible for everything. She reflects on all her memories with the real Zhang Hao and wonders if choosing to forget him would mean abandoning him in another world. Zhang Hao tells her not to forget the past as it's part of who she is, and even if she can't choose anyone, she still needs to move forward. He encourages Qin Qin to start anew. She blushes and is taken aback. A hand appears, affirming everything Zhang Hao said is true. She hears a familiar voice and turns to see the real Zhang Hao, confused, looking at his own hand. Qin Qin asks if it's really him. He confirms it, explaining that he's always been present, observing everything, even though he couldn't do anything. Seeing her so sad gave him the strength to speak up. He urges her to start living for herself as she has done so much for him, and apologizes for not understanding her actions in the past. He recalls the time when she scared everyone by hitting them, and she held him, reminding him of their promise to always be together. He remembers feeling scared and telling her he hated her and didn't want to stay with her, preferring to go back home. He yelled that he never wanted to see her again. Now the real Zhang Hao apologizes, admitting he was too immature to understand everything. He acknowledges that in the end, it was his actions that hurt her. Qin Qin cries, calling out his name, while the current Zhang Hao watches silently. He remembers the moment she collapsed and said she would leave. He found her disgusting, but he had told her not to worry. Now he finds himself face to face with the real Zhang Hao. He pleaded, asking not to reject Qin Qin, warning that this would be their last conversation and that if he turned her down, she would probably end up alone. He emphasized that he was the only one who could save her now. At that moment, the goddess of the Red Moon remarked how boring the situation was, saying no one was interested in watching this family drama. Everyone was startled and Zhang Hao asked what she was doing there. He wanted to know the purpose of all these games and why she was putting in so much effort. Suddenly, she floated in the air, blew in his face, and asked if he was angry. She said she had no obligation to explain but would make an exception for him. She recalled that during the event on the island, he had come very close to dying. However, he was her favorite toy, so she didn't want him to die so easily. She tried to wake him up, but unfortunately, he fell into a deep coma. That's when she discovered a very rare phenomenon. Two souls in the same body, harmonious yet contradictory. Finding this very interesting, she decided to play a fun game. She allowed the three women who loved him to invade his dreams and try to win his heart without him realizing it to see if he would choose to stay in that world or return to reality. This could have led to their identities being revealed and conflicts arising, or they could have been envious and tried to force him to stay in that world. She thought it was very interesting because she expected everyone would want to monopolize him. What she didn't expect was that the three women would come to an agreement to bring him back. She then started pulling his cheeks, asking if he had some kind of magic. One of the Zhang Haos interrupted, saying it was enough and asked if she could take him back. She agreed but warned that his time was running out. They were startled and asked what she meant by that. She reminded him that she only had powers during the periods of the Red Moon. Just as she had brought him from another world to complete the first wish, she warned that he might die immediately upon returning since she was extending his lifespan. She questioned if he was finally experiencing hallucinations and headaches due to the shared memories. Confused, Zhang Hao asked her to explain what would happen. She said that probably the two souls would continue fighting until both disappeared. Qin Qin shouted, saying she wouldn't accept the real Zhang Hao disappearing again. The real Zhang Hao said that sending a soul to another world for that person to die was the same as murder. The goddess laughed at their mention of murder and said that when a toy breaks, she just replaces it. Zhang Hao wasn't sure if she lacked the energy to help or just didn't care. What he understood was that the longer he spent in this body, the more hesitant and indecisive he became. The truth was, if both souls stayed in this body for too long, he would go insane and lose his sanity. The problem was that the goddess was just toying with him, and he had nothing to negotiate with against her. To him, it felt like a dead-end situation. A crack appeared in the sky, and she said she was tired of explaining. She was going to send them both to enjoy their last moments. The protagonist told Zhang Hao to stop crying and just listen to what he was about to say. He told him to reverse everything he did. If he raised his left arm, Zhang Hao should raise his right. If he lifted his right foot, Zhang Hao should lift his left. Zhang Hao acknowledged, and they began to make movements reminiscent of Dragon Ball. The goddess wondered what kind of idiotic plan this was. Zhang Hao said that the reason for all this was love for Qin Qin. Both wanted to be good to her, so they couldn't fall into the abyss of guilt. The protagonist said they would have to merge, and Zhang Hao asked how. The protagonist told him not to hesitate and just shout at the right moment. With that, they performed a fusion move from Dragon Ball, saying they loved Qin Qin. The goddess laughed, finding it hilarious, but suddenly smoke appeared in front of her. The Zhang Haos had merged. She wondered how that was possible. The unified Zhang Hao wonders if it was a success. Qin Qin, struggling to comprehend what's happening, feels overwhelmed. However, Zhang Hao hugs her and asks if she's okay. He quickly explains that he is not just one Zhang Hao, but both, with the memories and experiences of both lives. No matter what happens, he will always be there for her. The goddess of the Red Moon, intrigued, remarks that this plan is quite interesting, trying to combine two different people into a better one. She mentions that she has brought many people into this world, but all men eventually lose their minds. Is the only one who has achieved a perfect union without succumbing to desire. Zhang Hao then speculates if she has been hurt by someone, suggesting she always targets men and ruins their lives because some man broke her heart. She snaps at him to shut up and stop meddling in her life. A red aura surrounds him and Qin Qin, and Zhang Hao tells the goddess that she will find a good person. She threatens to come after him again and restart the cycle. Zhang Hao thanks her and says he'll be waiting. They can play together next time. The goddess is left puzzled by this bold boy's offer. Sometime later, Zhang Hao wakes up in a hospital. Slowly opening his eyes, the women around him ask if he has finally woken up and how he is feeling. Wei Man is excited, wondering if Qin Qin managed to resolve things. They explain that his hair suddenly turned black and his heart stopped for a few seconds. Zhang Hao assures them that the goddess did nothing and that everything is fine now. Wei Man vows to avenge everything the goddess made them go through, and agrees, stating that whether for good or ill, they will take down that woman. Zhang Hao tells them not to worry, the goddess won't appear for a while since she is powerless until the next red moon, which will be in 7 years. Wei Nan promises to protect him to the best of her ability. At this moment, Qin Qin apologizes, admitting that everything almost went wrong because of her selfish desires. Zhang Hao reassures her, saying that it's all in the past and that he should be the one thanking them. Qin Qin then declares that from now on, Zhang Hao will have to live with her so she can protect him every day. However, Wei Man immediately asserts that he will clearly be living with her. Wei Nan presses Zhang Hao to choose among the three of them, knowing the competition will be tough. Feeling awkward and unsure of how to respond, Zhang Hao tells them they won't like his answer, but he can't lie. He asks if it's possible for the four of them to live together. The three women fall silent, shocked by his suggestion, and then berate him, asking what nonsense he's talking about. Qin Qin grabs him, worried that he might be confused due to the accident, and points out that the public opinion would be scandalized by such an arrangement. Wei Nan firmly states that she would never share him, especially not with someone as treacherous as Qin Qin. Tensions rise, with Qin Qin seething with anger, declaring she will deal with Wei Nan. However, Wei suggests that Qin Qin could stay close as a servant or a good friend. Once again, they start arguing, and Zhang Hao wonders how they ended up back in the same situation. Says she doesn't care as long as Zhang Hao wants it too. She's willing to stay close to him and give him her love no matter where they are. She then announces that she's going to make a final move, leaving him confused. Opening a book, she starts a marriage vow, promising to stay with him in sickness and in health. The two doctors are taken aback by her determination. Concludes by saying that she has chosen the person she wants to spend the rest of her life with. Zhang Hao stands there speechless. He reflects on how much he has changed from the person he was in the other world. Whenever he was down, Qin Qin was always there to help him. Wei, on the other hand, taught him things and perspectives about this world that he never imagined. And Ayu has always been someone he can rely on and trust. To him, all three were like bright lights showing him the way. He understands that his request is wrong, but he wants them to consider it. He can no longer choose one and leave the other sad. They could be together, but the price would be that they would never be able to legally marry. Wei Nan narrows her eyes and asks if he thinks he's in an anime to be making a harem. She says that if it were any other man, he would have already been thrown into the river. However, she says it's not impossible as long as he agrees to one condition. In their private space, the other two cannot appear. She must be the first and also the first to have a child. Qin Qin pushes her away, reminding her that the boy is still in school, and assures Zhang Hao that no matter what happens, she will protect him from everything. However, it's clear that this is part of her plan to gradually monopolize him for herself. Meanwhile, Wei Man argues that there must be a hierarchy in a household, and as the most successful, she should be the head. Qin Qin refuses, stating that she has lived with Zhang Hao the longest. While they argue, Yu innocently mentions that they are the only ones the same age. With a sigh, Zhang Hao coughs and they ask if he is okay. He says he feels awful and would only feel better if they stopped fighting. They all jump onto the bed with him, and he thanks everyone. The scene jumps to 2 years later on a certain island. Someone looks at a paper and tells them they're being watched. It's Zhang Hao and someone brings him something to eat. Of course, it's Qin, reminding him to replenish his fluids. From a distance, Y-Man calls out to him, saying it's time to start their daily exercises. Zhang Hao asks Qin if she wants to join the exercises. Yu then suggests that after the exercises, they could practice some one-on-one fighting. Zhang Hao reflects on his quest to understand the meaning of being a true man. He thinks it involves knowing what you want in life, pursuing it, and always taking responsibility for your choices. Looking around at the scenery, he says everything seems great and advises us, the viewers, to start being the protagonists of our own lives. The story then fast-forwards a few years. Zhang Hao's parents are puzzled by a letter in their hands. There's a mixed-eyed child standing before them. In the letter, Zhang Hao apologizes for disappearing for a while but says that they are all doing well. He explains that the child is their grandchild. The butler who brought the child says that Zhang Hao will return in a month to greet everyone. The father comments that their son is quite peculiar, going on a trip and leaving a grandchild behind, while Zhang Hao's mother wonders who the child's mother is. Curious, they ask the butler, who unfortunately has no idea either. Suddenly, Y-Man's mother appears at the house. Everyone asks what she's doing there. She says she's there to see her grandchild, noting how cute the child is and how much he resembles her daughter. She affectionately pats the baby's head, mentioning that the baby will need to inherit the company since her daughter abandoned it. Just then, Nayu's grandmother appears at the door, demanding they let go of her grandchild and threatening to call the police. Y-Man's mother retorts, pointing out the child's resemblance to her daughter, but the grandmother counters, insisting the baby clearly resembles Yu. As they bicker, Zhang Hao's family watches in silence. The baby suddenly starts crying, causing the women to feel embarrassed for arguing over such a matter. Zhang Hao's father reminds everyone that Zhang Hao mentioned he would return in a month. They all agree there's no rush, and they can figure everything out later. For now, the most important thing is to take care of the child. The goddess watched everything, remarking that another person had been born with different abilities. She thought that when the time was right, she would have even more fun with all of this. At the airport, the three women told Zhang Hao that it was a bit irresponsible to leave their child behind like that. However, Zhang Hao reassured them that he trusted his family, so there was nothing to worry about. Though they seemed displeased and wanted to complain, he hugged them all, saying there was nothing to worry about and that it was time for them to enjoy themselves. Their honeymoon together was about to begin. Even though they couldn't have a proper wedding, they should still go through all the rituals. And with that, they were off to leave a